Manufactured consent framework. You wake up every morning, stretch, reach for your phone, and start scrolling. News, trending topics, opinions, outrage, an endless buffet of choices and voices. It feels like freedom. You feel empowered, updated, included. But pause for a moment. What if I told you that the reality you swim in, the sea of options you believe you've selected, was carefully filtered long before you even opened your eyes? What if the very boundaries of your beliefs, your fears, your sense of right and wrong, were softly, invisibly manufactured by forces you rarely question? This isn't science fiction. It's not paranoia. This is the manufactured consent framework, the hidden operating system of modern society. Manufactured consent is the silent architecture behind what you see, what you hear, and most dangerously, what you believe. It's the sum of every subtle nudge, every framed headline, every curated newsfeed, every carefully orchestrated public debate. It's a system designed not to force you, but to make you want exactly what you were supposed to want all along. Let's dig into the machinery. Imagine a society with truly infinite choices. Chaotic, messy, unpredictable. No leader, no advertiser, no corporation, no government can control such a landscape. So what do? They narrow it. Quietly, efficiently. Choices that might destabilize the narrative are erased before you ever notice them missing. Information that could spark dissent is drowned under a tide of noise or quietly ignored. The remaining options are polished, repeated, and made attractive. So, when you finally choose, you do so freely. But in reality, you're choosing from a menu that was designed for you. Let's take a real-world example. Media. Hundreds of TV channels, millions of websites, thousands of news outlets. So much diversity, right? But behind the scenes, 6 corporations control almost everything you see in mainstream American media. 6. Each with their own interests, shareholders, political ties. What you see as a spectrum of choice is often just variations of the same pre-approved song. Now, add the algorithm. Every swipe, every click, every like and share, fed back into a system that learns what keeps you scrolling, not what informs you, not what challenges you, but what makes you comfortable, what makes you angry in the right ways, what pushes you to buy, to vote, to stay afraid or hopeful, at just the right moments. And that's just media. Step into politics. You believe you have a voice. But most elections present only a handful of candidates, carefully filtered through party machinery, corporate funding, and media narratives. Radical voices, inconvenient ideas, structural changes, they're pushed to the fringe, mocked, or erased. You don't notice what's missing. You only see the 2 options in front of you, red or blue, left or right. You choose, you vote, you feel empowered. But were you ever really free to select something different? Or were your boundaries drawn long before you even entered the room? Manufactured consent doesn't need to silence you. It just needs to shape the space where your voice is allowed to echo. This is why protest is permitted, even encouraged, so long as it stays within certain lines. Rage all you want online, but as long as you don't disrupt the flows of power, your dissent is just another data set, another blip in the algorithm. It goes even deeper. Think about what you desire, the clothes you wear, the tech you buy, the dreams you chase. You think they're yours, but every brand, every influencer, every movie and song is carefully designed to feed your sense of self. Your tribe, your identity, your aspiration. Be unique, they say. Be yourself. But if everyone is being unique in the same way, is it really uniqueness, or just another layer of conformity painted in the colors of freedom? It's so subtle you almost want to deny it. You want to believe you're immune. Not me, you say. I see through the propaganda. But the most insidious power of manufactured consent is not to make you believe everything you hear. It's to make you believe that your skepticism itself is part of the plan. That by doubting, by resisting, by mocking, you are outside the system. When really, the system has just accounted for that too. Look back at history. Every empire, every regime has had its mechanisms for shaping belief. From Roman bread and circuses to medieval churches, from royal decrees to state-controlled media, the story is the same. Control the flow of information, and you control the limits of imagination. You don't have to burn every book. You just have to make sure the right ones are read, the right voices are amplified, the wrong ones are made invisible. But in the digital age, the scale is beyond anything history has seen. The feedback loops are faster. The control is decentralized. Not a single dictator, but millions of micro forces, all pulling you into patterns of belief and behavior, all while maintaining the illusion of freedom. Let's get personal. Think about the last major opinion you formed. Did it arise from a long, solitary meditation? Or did it trickle in, drip by drip, from headlines, tweets, memes, heated debates, outrage cycles? The shape of your worldview was built not by one act of will, but by 1,000 tiny influences, most of which you never even noticed. Think about trending topics. Why does something trend? Because it's popular, or because someone somewhere decided it should be seen by millions at once. Social media platforms are not neutral. They are filters, gatekeepers, amplifiers. They decide what becomes the conversation and what disappears before it even begins. It's not just politics or news. It's your sense of normal. What's acceptable? Who gets to speak? Who is taken seriously? Who is ignored? Your very sense of what is common sense is not born inside you. It is poured in, drop by drop, through schools, media, peer groups, algorithms, advertising. But here's the paradox. Manufactured consent doesn't mean you're a robot. You still feel, choose, suffer, rebel. The system isn't perfect. People break out, movements erupt, whistleblowers leak, artists disrupt. But for every voice that breaks through, there are 1,000 more that never made it past the filters. This is not a conspiracy. It's just how complex societies manage themselves. Total chaos is unlivable. But the price of order is consent, manufactured, managed, repeated until it feels like nature. So, what do? Despair? Rebel? Maybe both. The first step is awareness. Notice the boundaries of your consent. Ask, who benefits if I believe this? Who profits if I buy this? Whose interests are being served if I stay silent, or enraged, or distracted? Don't just look for the bars of the cage. Notice the softness of the velvet lining. The system works best when you don't feel imprisoned, when you feel free, even as you're softly steered. You are not powerless, but you are not as free as you think. The world is not a menu of endless possibilities. It's a table set by invisible hands, with choices carefully arranged to seem natural, inevitable, and self-chosen. So next time you feel the thrill of choice, pause. Ask yourself, who offered you the menu? What's not being served? And who, behind the curtain, is writing the script of your consent? Freedom is not just the ability to choose. It is the courage to question the origin of your choices, to seek the invisible hands behind the curtain, and to refuse, even softly, the comfort of decisions made for you. That is where real freedom begins. And that is where the story of manufactured consent, your story, might finally start to change. The illusion of choice. You wake up every morning believing that your day is a blank canvas, that you can go anywhere, do anything, become anyone. But what if that canvas was sketched out for you long before you even opened your eyes? What if every choice you're given, every shelf at the supermarket, every vote at the ballot, every personalized ad, was already confined to a narrow corridor, walled in by invisible hands? They call it freedom. They call it individuality. But if you look closer, the lines between freedom and pre-selection start to blur, then vanish. Imagine this. You're standing in a store, overwhelmed by a wall of toothpaste, whitening, sensitive, charcoal, fresh. 10 different brands, 20 flavors, endless options, yet all are owned by just 2 or 3 multinational corporations. You think you're making a choice, but the outcome is the same. The profit goes to the same headquarters. The ingredients barely shift. The only thing you're choosing is the color of the box. The sensation of choice is so powerful, it overrides the reality behind it. You feel empowered, even as your path is gently herded by corporate interests, advertising psychology, and decades of behind-the-scenes deals. Your autonomy is curated, shaped into something palatable, marketable, and, above all, manageable. The illusion of choice isn't limited to products. It's built into the structure of society itself. Step into the world of politics. 3 parties, 5, 10, the names differ, the colors change, the slogans echo through the airwaves, but the core decisions, the economic engines, the fundamental allegiances rarely budge. On the issues that matter most, the ones that define who profits and who suffers. The options close in like teeth. You are voting, but are you choosing? You're handed a menu in a restaurant, but the chef already decided what's possible. All you can do is pick your favorite flavor of the same predetermined dish. Think about the paths set out for you in life. School tells you that there are so many futures to dream of, but the system is designed to funnel you into a handful of predictable roles. The curriculum is fixed, the expectations are enforced. From your first day, the questions are scripted. What do you want to be? Not, what do you want to create, or how do you want to live? But, which box will you fit into? And the boxes are lined up by a system that rewards compliance, not true exploration. Your choices are pre-filtered for what serves the structure, not what awakens your unique soul. The deeper you look, the more this pattern emerges. Streaming services brag about 1 million movies, but most are algorithmically generated to resemble what's already trending. You scroll, believing you're discovering. But the discoverable is a carefully walled garden. Social media promises a global conversation, but the feeds are engineered, the trending topics manufactured, the outrage measured and dosed for maximum engagement. You think you're choosing who to listen to, what to care about. But the real architects are feeding you a menu, curated, filtered, sanitized, or weaponized. Even your sense of self isn't immune. The fashion you wear, the slang you use, the very ideas you debate, they're seeded into your consciousness by culture, media, history. The origin of your preferences is so deeply layered, so invisibly shaped, that by the time you call something my taste, it's already been passed down, repackaged, and sold to you. You are a consumer of choices, but not always the author of them. Let's go deeper. Picture the so-called choose-your-adventure books. They promise infinite outcomes, branching realities. But turn the pages. Most roads lead back to the same handful of endings. No matter what path you take, you're funneled toward a predetermined conclusion written by someone else. This is the architecture of modern life. The illusion of choice is about creating a sensation of freedom while steering you toward outcomes that serve the architects, corporations, institutions, governments, systems of power. You might feel the thrill of agency, but beneath the surface, the rails are set. The variables are controlled. Look at technology. The operating systems that run your devices are locked down. You can choose between iPhone or Android, Windows or Mac, but the code, the infrastructure, the limitations, they're designed to be invisible cages. Want to run something not approved by the gatekeepers? Good luck. Your device is a sandbox, and you're only allowed to play with the toys deemed safe. Even the idea of openness is bounded. There are always walls, even if you can't see them. Your choices exist, but only within a pre-approved sandbox. The sandbox grows, but the walls remain. Ask yourself, why is this illusion so effective? Why do we fall for it again and again? Because true freedom is terrifying. Limitless possibility creates anxiety, not comfort. Too many choices paralyze. Most people want guidance, direction, structure. So, the world delivers, a flood of options, all mapped to familiar, safe endpoints. We feel satisfied, even grateful, for the very boundaries that limit us. But the price of this comfort is subtle. It is the erosion of true autonomy, the atrophy of critical thinking, the slow drift into passivity. You stop questioning the boundaries because questioning is uncomfortable. You start believing the menu is the territory. The available choices are all that ever could exist. You defend your favorite brand, your political party, your lifestyle, as if you were defending yourself. The system breeds loyalty by making the walls invisible, by turning limitation into identity. There are moments when the curtain slips, when you realize all the news channels are telling the same story in slightly different words, when you notice that every city's high street looks the same. Franchises, logos, colors, fonts. When you try to break away and discover that the alternatives are just as pre-structured, just as contained. It's in these moments that the truth of the illusion hits hardest, not as an abstract theory, but as a personal betrayal. The world you thought was open is, in fact, a maze with no exit. So what can you do? The first step is awareness. Recognize the architecture of your choices. When you feel yourself selecting from a menu, ask, who wrote this menu? What's missing from it? What would I want if I could imagine beyond the options provided? Train yourself to see the invisible boundaries. Seek out the seams in the walls, the cracks where real novelty might creep through. Reclaiming your agency means accepting discomfort. It means refusing to be pacified by the thrill of small decisions while ignoring the big structures that shape them. It means digging deeper, questioning not just what you choose, but why you're being offered those choices in the first place. It means cultivating the skill to imagine, to create, to demand more than what is handed to you. Sometimes, real choice isn't in picking from what's on the shelf, but in walking out the door and building your own shelf. In a world designed to make you feel free while keeping you comfortably caged, true freedom begins where the illusion ends. It's not easy. It's not safe. But it's the only way to live authentically. Next time you're presented with a wall of options, remember, 10 brands, 3 parties, 5 paths, but all lead to the same gate. The only way out is to realize the gate itself was built for you, and you can step beyond it. The real revolution isn't in choosing the best wrapping, it's in unwrapping the whole system, exposing the architecture beneath, and finally, choosing for yourself. Invisible threat, engineering. Fear is not born, it's manufactured. You might think you're afraid of what's real, disease, disaster, war, or some dark figure lurking at the edge of your vision. But in truth, the most powerful fear you'll ever feel is the kind someone else planted in you, quietly, intentionally, and for a purpose you may never see. Invisible threat. Engineering is the craft of forging terror from nothing, transforming a rumor into a weapon, a whisper into a wildfire, a shadow into a force that shapes nations. Imagine this. You wake up one day to the news that something dangerous is coming. Maybe it's a virus, maybe it's a foreign enemy, maybe it's a faceless hacker in a distant room. You haven't seen it. You haven't felt it. But you feel a chill in the air. Suddenly every cough is a warning. Every stranger is a risk. Every news report, a countdown. The enemy might not exist, but your fear of them becomes more real than any physical threat could ever be. That fear changes your behavior. You start to wash your hands until they bleed. You avoid your friends. You side-eye your neighbors. You question your memories. You obey new rules without understanding why. Because the penalty is not just a fine, but social exile, shame, or even death. The world shrinks. Your comfort zone collapses into a bunker built from anxiety. It doesn't matter if the threat is ever proven or revealed, because the engineers of fear know something about your mind that you don't. Once fear enters your bloodstream, it becomes self-sustaining. Invisible threat. Engineering is not a conspiracy theory. It's a toolkit, studied, refined, and wielded by everyone from governments to advertisers, intelligence agencies to internet trolls. It starts small with a suggestion: be careful. You never know who might be watching. It's better to be safe than sorry. But behind every suggestion is a seed, and every seed can grow into a forest of nightmares if watered correctly. Consider Operation Northwoods, a real Cold War plan proposed by U.S. military leaders, suggesting that fake terrorist attacks could be staged to manipulate public opinion and justify war. The plan was never executed, but the blueprint remains. Invent a threat. Broadcast the fear, then offer a solution. Or think of media cycles during times of crisis. 24-hour news coverage, flashing breaking news banners, ominous background music, a parade of experts speculating on what might be coming. The facts are always blurry. The enemy, always just out of reach. The effect is the same. Vigilance, then exhaustion, then compliance. This is not just a government trick. Companies use it too. Think of cybersecurity ads that show hackers in hoodies, faces hidden in shadow, typing lines of code that look like hieroglyphs. The threat is unseen, undefined, but everywhere. You are told you're vulnerable, and the only way to be safe, buy the product. Or consider the post-9/11 world, where color-coded terror alerts shaped daily life in the United States. The actual threat was rarely visible or specific, but the psychological effect was profound. People became suspicious of each other, alert to the smallest sign of difference, willing to accept surveillance and restrictions that would have seemed unthinkable just years before. Fear became currency, traded for obedience and the illusion of safety. Invisible threat engineering goes deeper than policy or profit. It's psychological warfare at its purest, bypassing your logic, hijacking your limbic system, turning you against your own senses. It works because the human mind is wired to detect patterns, to seek meaning, to assume danger even when evidence is thin. This kept our ancestors alive on the savannah. But in a world of screens and signals, it makes us vulnerable to manipulation on a global scale. Your brain cannot distinguish between a real tiger in the grass and a headline warning of invisible enemies. The stress hormone, the pulse spike, the decision to flee or freeze, they happen regardless. Let's look closer. In 1938, Orson Welles broadcasted The War of the Worlds on radio. It was a work of fiction, but the style was so realistic, so urgent, that thousands of listeners believed Martians were actually invading Earth. There was no alien, no threat, just fear, engineered through voice, timing, and trust in the media. People panicked, ran into the streets, called the police. This is the power of the unseen threat. The mind fills in the blanks with monsters far worse than any truth. In modern times, social media amplifies the invisible threat. A single tweet, a faked video, a manipulated statistic, these can spread panic faster than any virus. The goal is not always to deceive directly, but to create enough uncertainty, enough doubt, that people begin to suspect everything and everyone. In this haze, truth becomes negotiable, reality bends, and the loudest fear wins. Memes about or 5G towers causing illness, rumors about tainted food, viral videos of suspicious strangers, all become tools in the invisible engineer's arsenal. Now, ask yourself, how much of what you fear is truly yours? How much was chosen for you, sculpted and delivered by hands you'll never see? When you lock your doors, when you cross the street, when you hesitate to speak your mind, is it because of a real threat, or because someone, somewhere, wanted you to be afraid? The answer is rarely simple. The engineers of fear thrive on ambiguity. They don't need you to believe every lie, only to doubt the truth, to second-guess your instincts, to accept a life half-lived in anticipation of an attack that may never come. This is not to say all threats are imaginary. Sometimes danger is real, and vigilance is necessary. But the line between caution and captivity is thin, and invisible threat engineering is designed to push you across it without you ever noticing. Once fear becomes habit, it no longer needs an enemy to sustain it. You become your own jailer, reinforcing the walls every day with your own anxiety. Consider a child afraid of the dark. At first, the fear is about what might be hiding in the closet or under the bed. But after enough warnings, enough stories, enough subtle cues, the darkness itself becomes the enemy. There's no need for a monster. The possibility is enough. Adults are no different. We fear what we cannot see, what we cannot name, what we cannot touch. And those who understand this, who learn to craft the suggestion of danger without ever proving its existence, hold immense power over our minds, our choices, our lives. Fear can be weaponized not just against individuals, but entire populations. Propaganda posters, shadowy political ads, urgent public service announcements, each carefully calibrated to keep you on edge, unsure, looking over your shoulder. The result? A society that polices itself, that turns on dissenters, that demands protection from invisible boogeymen, and gladly hands over rights and freedoms for the promise of safety. Invisible threat. Engineering is so effective because it asks you to fill in the blanks with your own worst nightmares. It forges the bars of your mental prison out of your own imagination, and it does so quietly, patiently, until you forget what freedom from fear ever felt like. So, the next time you feel a sudden chill, a sense that something is wrong, even though you cannot say why, pause. Ask yourself, whose voice is echoing in your head? Whose fingerprints are on your fear? The world is not as safe as you wish, nor as dangerous as you dread. But between those poles lies a twilight zone engineered by others, a landscape where your thoughts and reactions are not truly your own. To escape the invisible threat is to reclaim your agency, to ask questions, to demand evidence, to recognize when you're being played, not by the threat itself, but by the architects of terror who profit from your panic. They don't care if you ever see the enemy. They only care that you never stop searching, that your life is lived in anticipation, not in peace, that every door creaks, every shadow lengthens, every news cycle deepens the sense that you are not safe, not ever. And as long as you believe that, the engineers of fear have already won. Trauma repetition, protocol. Imagine a life where pain isn't a sudden strike, but a slow, calculated ritual, where the first wound shocks you, the second confuses you, and the third, by then, it almost feels expected. This is not a story about an isolated trauma, but about a system, a machinery built not to heal you, but to shape you by repeating the wound over and over until you begin to mistake injury for identity. This is the trauma repetition protocol, a reality, not a theory. It's found in abusive homes, toxic workplaces, even entire cultures. At first, trauma explodes. Violent, unpredictable, undeniable. A parent's rage, a partner's cruelty, a bully's laughter. You flinch, you resist, you cry for help. But the protocol isn't just the pain, it's the repetition, the rhythm, the slow drumbeat of suffering that returns again and again until it becomes the background music of your existence. Every time it happens, a little more of you recedes. You adapt, because adaptation is survival. Your mind builds defenses. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you deserve it. The more it repeats, the less it surprises you. One day you barely notice when the wound opens up again. You clean the blood off your hands and tell yourself it's normal, expected, part of the script. Why does this happen? Because repetition isn't just a side effect of trauma, it's a weapon. Repetition is what transforms an injury into a belief. The first time you're hurt, you know something is wrong. By the 100th time, you wonder if you are what's wrong. This is not just psychological theory. It is reality, documented in the lives of millions. Look at the child who grows up in a household where every mistake is met with rage or ridicule. At first, she cries, runs, hides, but the pattern never changes. The outbursts come like clockwork, unpredictable only in their timing. She learns not to hope for change, only to brace for the next blow. Eventually, she stops telling anyone. She tells herself, maybe if I was better, they wouldn't get so angry. The wound becomes her lesson, or consider the employee who endures humiliation day after day from a toxic boss. The first time it happens, he's shocked. He thinks it must be a misunderstanding. But it happens again and again and again. He sees the eyes of his coworkers looking away. Nobody intervenes. After a while, he stops objecting. He tells himself, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I need to work harder. Maybe I deserve this. The repetition turns the wound into a mirror. Or think of entire societies, where cycles of prejudice, poverty, or exclusion repeat for generations. If you grow up in a world where certain doors are always closed, opportunities denied, voices silenced, you begin to accept that ceiling as part of the sky. The repetition of suffering becomes the gravity of your world. You forget what it's like to move freely. This is the genius and the cruelty of the trauma repetition protocol. It works by normalization. The more often you are wounded, the less shocking it is. Eventually, you can't remember life without the pain. And when you reach that point, you are vulnerable to the final, most insidious twist. They tell you the bleeding is your fault, that you asked for it, that you brought it on yourself, that if you were stronger, smarter, kinder, this wouldn't happen. The world turns you into the architect of your own pain. It sounds monstrous, but it's everywhere. Listen to the stories of people in abusive relationships. They often blame themselves for provoking the abuse. Children in high-conflict homes believe they're the reason for their parents fighting. Employees gaslit by their employers believe they're incompetent. People oppressed by systemic injustice are told they just need to try harder. The repetition conditions you to believe the fault lies within. The science backs this up. Trauma repetition rewires the brain. Each new injury strengthens the neural pathways associated with fear, shame, and helplessness. Your body learns to brace for pain even when there's no immediate threat. Your nervous system is always on edge, ready for the next blow. Over time, the repeated stress can cause permanent changes. Your amygdala becomes hyperactive. Your hippocampus shrinks. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, weakens. You literally become less able to break the cycle. Trauma isn't just psychological, it becomes physiological. The repetition leaves a chemical fingerprint on your soul, but the real horror is how invisible it becomes. People living under this protocol may seem calm, even functional. They might laugh, work, raise families, but under the surface, they are bleeding. They've learned to cover the wounds so perfectly that nobody sees the scars, even themselves. They dismiss their pain. They say, others have it worse. They normalize the abuse, rationalize the cruelty, minimize the damage. They become complicit in their own silencing. And this, more than anything, is what the protocol aims for: silence. If you don't talk about your wound, it becomes your secret. If you never protest, the abuser's power becomes permanent. The world loves a silent victim because silence keeps the machinery running. Think about how this pattern repeats on every level. In families, it's called keeping the peace. In workplaces, it's not rocking the boat. In societies, it's the way things are. The repetition protocol is reinforced not just by the abuser, but by everyone who looks away. Everyone who says, "Don't make trouble." Every voice that tells you to be grateful, to toughen up, to move on, becomes another hand pushing you back into the protocol. But here's the truth. The repetition is a lie. Pain is not normal. You were not born to bleed. The fact that you have adapted to pain does not mean you deserved it. The protocol can be broken, but only if you see it for what it is. Only if you recognize the wound and refuse to accept it as your fault. Breaking out of the trauma repetition protocol is hard, harder than most people can imagine. It means confronting the lie that you deserve to be hurt. It means opening wounds that you've hidden for years. It means facing the reality that the people or systems you trusted may have been the source of your pain. It means risking conflict, risking rejection, risking the collapse of everything you thought you knew. But it also means reclaiming your story. It means refusing to repeat what was done to you. It means saying, "I am not what happened to me." It means finding others who see your wounds not as weakness, but as evidence of survival. The first step is always the hardest: recognition. Say it out loud. The wound was real. The repetition was not your fault. The bleeding is not a character flaw. The silence is not consent. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to remember. It's okay to fight back. And if you are listening to this, if you recognize yourself in these words, know this. The repetition protocol is powerful, but it is not unbreakable. You can find help. You can tell your story. You can demand change. Your wounds do not define you. The world needs you whole, not because you never bled, but because you learned, at last, to heal. So the next time someone tells you it's your fault you're bleeding, look at your wounds and remember, you were never the architect of your own pain. You are the survivor of a system designed to break you. But you are more than the sum of your injuries, and you are not alone. The hero-villain, flip. You grow up believing the world is clear-cut, good and evil, heroes and villains. The lines are supposed to be sharp, unblurred. We're taught from childhood to identify the hero, to root for the right side, to recognize evil when it grins its crooked grin. But what happens when the script is flipped? When the hero you worship becomes the villain in someone else's story, and the enemy, the outcast, is raised up as the new savior. This isn't just fiction. This isn't just a story you watch from a distance. This is the fabric of reality, stitched by the hands of those who control the narrative, those who understand that perception is more powerful than truth. Look around. History, politics, even your own personal relationships. Everywhere, the hero-villain flip is in motion. It starts quietly, a slow poison. Maybe a rumor, maybe a headline, maybe a story whispered in the darkness. The villain, once feared, is given a new mask, a martyr, a misunderstood genius, a victim of circumstance. Meanwhile, the hero, once revered, is exposed, smeared, questioned, reframed as the true threat lurking in plain sight. And the more you watch, the less you trust your own eyes. The story changes not because the facts have changed, but because the storytellers have shifted the camera. This is not just propaganda. It's a psychological operation. They understand the deepest flaw in human perception, our need for stories that make sense, for characters to love and hate, for lines to be drawn so we can sleep at night, certain that we know who we are and where we stand. But reality is not a fairy tale. The villain smiles at you from the podium, promising safety. The hero is handcuffed, dragged through mud, called traitor, liar, criminal. This is not a glitch. It's the system at work. Take history's greatest revolutions. The French Revolution was once a beacon of liberty. The rebels were the heroes. But to the monarchy, they were demons, madmen, butchers. Flip the script again, and the same heroes of the revolution are guillotining innocents, plunging the country into terror. Robespierre, the savior of the people, becomes the architect of blood. The crowd cheers, then turns, then cheers again for his execution. The crowd never realizes they have been played, that their perceptions are manufactured and discarded at will. Or look at modern politics. One day a leader is hailed as the hope of the nation, the shield against chaos. The next, that same leader is the face of corruption, the architect of every wrong. Not because the evidence has suddenly appeared, but because the storytellers, those with the cameras, the headlines, the reach, decide to flip the narrative. Suddenly, the once despised opposition becomes the voice of reason, the defender of democracy. And you feel the ground shifting beneath your feet. You remember what you believed last year, and it doesn't match what you are told to believe now. You begin to question, who decides who the hero is? Who tells you who to trust? The hero-villain. Flip is not just an abstract theory, it's a technique. It's been used in war, in marketing, in cults, in families. During the Cold War, spies from both sides were painted as monsters. But when one defected, the villain became the hero overnight, celebrated in parades, immortalized in books. What changed? Not their actions, not their morals, just the side telling the story. Even in your own life, this flip happens. A friend betrays you, and suddenly, every memory is tainted. Were they ever really your friend? Or were you blind, fooled, manipulated? Your own mind re-edits the past to fit the new narrative. You villainize them. Or worse, you turn on yourself, wondering if you were the villain all along. Memory is malleable, perception is plastic. Those who know how to mold them, rule. Think about social media. A viral video is cut to show the villain in a single moment. A glare, a word, an outburst. Millions condemn them. The mob demands justice. Days later, the full story emerges. The villain was the victim, or at least not as simple as we thought. But it's too late. The flip has happened. The script is written, and no one wants to admit they were wrong. It's easier to move on, to wait for the next flip. This psychological manipulation goes deeper than most realize. It preys on your emotional need for certainty, for safety, for belonging. If you don't choose a side, you feel lost. But every side knows this, so they manufacture the villain. They offer you a hero to worship or a devil to fear. They polarize, they divide, because in confusion, you are easier to lead. You stop asking questions. You crave direction. The hero-villain flip isn't just a story. They make you live inside it. And the ultimate trick? They make you doubt your own perception. When every fact can be spun, when every hero can be brought low, and every villain washed clean, you lose trust in your own eyes. You look for consensus, for the group's approval, for the loudest voice. The crowd becomes the authority. Truth dissolves. You're left adrift, desperate for something, anything, to believe in. But it doesn't have to be this way. Recognize the signs. Watch for the flip. When a new enemy is suddenly everywhere, when a hero is suddenly everywhere, pause. Ask who is telling the story, and why. Look for the edits, the missing context, the sudden change in tone. Heroes and villains are not fixed points. They are roles assigned by those in power, shuffled like cards to suit the moment. In every era, in every regime, in every personal conflict, the script can be rewritten. The real question is, will you let them write your story, or will you see through the illusion? Because the most dangerous thing isn't that the hero becomes the villain, or the villain becomes the hero. The most dangerous thing is when you lose the ability to tell the difference at all. When trust is eroded, when perception is manipulated, when stories become weapons, reality itself becomes the victim. And you, lost in the flip, are left wondering who you really are and what you should believe. Don't give away your power. Don't surrender your story. Heroes and villains are tools, masks. The truth is deeper, messier, often hidden beneath layers of narrative designed to keep you asleep. Wake up. Peel back the layers. Refuse to accept the flip without question, because the world needs people who can see through the illusion, who can hold complexity, who aren't afraid to face the reality that every hero has a shadow and every villain has a story. This is the hero-villain flip, and it's happening right now. The question is, are you watching the show or are you trapped inside it? Controlled dissent mechanism. You feel it, don't you? That itch to resist, that surge of outrage when you read the news, scroll through your feed, or hear another promise broken by someone in power. You want to rebel. You want to stand up, raise your voice, let them hear your anger. Maybe you do. Maybe you post, you protest, you sign petitions, you shout your truth into the void. But then what? Does the system change? Or does your scream bounce back at you, echoing off invisible walls, growing weaker until it's just another background noise in the world's endless hum? Welcome to the controlled dissent mechanism, the architecture that lets you rebel, but only inside the lines drawn for you. You're allowed to get angry. You're even encouraged to. But your rebellion has a curfew, a leash, a ceiling made of bulletproof glass. Scream as loud as you want. March, chant, tweet, cry. But the walls won't break. Not unless you find the cracks they never wanted you to see. Let's go deeper. Societies need order. Power needs legitimacy. But people are not robots. They hurt. They hope. They see injustice. They crave justice. If every grievance were ignored, every wound left to rot, systems would collapse in flames. So, the system learns to absorb dissent, to contain it, to channel it. Not to destroy it, but to diffuse it. Like a pressure cooker with a built-in valve, dissent is not crushed but managed, allowed, even manufactured. History is littered with examples. Think about the student protests of the 1960s. America, France, the world. The images, fists raised, tear gas clouds, chants for peace and freedom. Did those voices change things? Sometimes, yes. But often, the most disruptive energies were pulled into acceptable channels, reshaped into safe reforms, memorialized, then neutralized. The anger becomes a symbol, a nostalgia, a story told by the very institutions that once feared it. Look at modern politics. Outrage is not just tolerated, it's monetized. Talk shows, social media, street protests, hashtags, each a chamber in a vast ecosystem. You rage against the injustice you see. You find a tribe of the equally furious. You post, you trend, you feel heard. And then, when the cycle ends, the system stands unchanged. Your anger has been spent, like a storm breaking harmlessly against cliffs. The illusion of change, without the danger of transformation. It's not just a political trick, it's a psychological one. Humans need to express pain, to feel seen, to know their voices matter. The controlled dissent mechanism gives you that outlet. It gives you symbols to smash, villains to boo, rituals to enact. All the while, the foundation stays untouched. You rebel, but you rebel in the way that's been rehearsed, permitted, pre-approved. Take a look at social media. Platforms claim to be the megaphone of the people, the true voice of the masses. But every platform is a gated community. Algorithms amplify some protests, silence others. Hashtags trend because they're allowed to. Viral outrage explodes, then vanishes, overtaken by the next day's spectacle. You think you're shaking the walls, but you're shouting in a room padded with soft, soundproofed certainty. Dissent is also a safety valve. The system knows you'll get angry. It plans for it. It expects protest. It might even provoke it, knowing that when you spend your fury, you'll be tired. You'll go home. You'll click like and tell yourself you made a difference. It feels real. But the glass never cracks. Let's make it more personal. Imagine you're at a company that says it welcomes feedback. There are suggestion boxes, safe spaces, channels for you to speak your mind. But what happens when your feedback threatens profit, power, or image? Meetings are held, polite nods are given, promises are made, but the walls remain. The truly dangerous ideas never reach the decision makers, or if they do, they're diluted, delayed, spun into PR. You're not silenced, you're heard, processed, and placed gently back where you started. Even in art, music, literature, the pattern repeats. The market loves a rebel. The rebel is profitable, as long as their challenge can be packaged, sold, turned into fashion. How many punk bands, once screaming against the system, now headline corporate festivals? How many radical writers become canon, their most incendiary words lost in the footnotes? Rebellion is not suppressed, it's commodified, turned into wallpaper for the very system it once attacked. But why does this work? Because true, system-breaking dissent is rare and dangerous. Most of us, most of the time, are not revolutionaries. We are tired. We have jobs, families, fears. We need to vent, to protest, to feel part of something. The controlled dissent mechanism gives us that release, but never lets us reach the foundation. It keeps the furniture rearranged, while the house stands unshaken. Sometimes, the illusion is so deep, we turn against ourselves. We fight each other, left against right, young against old, city against countryside, while the system profits from the spectacle. Our anger is not just contained, it's redirected, fragmented, made harmless by making it endless. It's easy to think the answer is to scream louder, march harder, post more furiously. But that's part of the trick. The true challenge is not volume, it's vision. To see the walls, to map the architecture of your own containment. Ask yourself, who is listening? Who profits from my outrage? What happens if I go beyond the walls? If I question the foundation, not just the furniture? Controlled dissent is not just a tool of governments or corporations. It's a pattern of human behavior, as old as civilization. Empires let the mob shout in the arena, so long as the palace gates remain closed. Religious orders let you confess your sins, so long as you don't question the dogma. The ritual of rebellion is safe, so long as it stays in the ritual. So, what breaks the glass? Sometimes, rarely, a voice or a movement goes off script, refuses to be contained, finds the crack in the wall, and shoves a crowbar through it. Whistleblowers who leak forbidden truths, movements that refuse to be co-opted, commodified, silenced. The system shudders. Panic flickers in the eyes of power. And sometimes, just sometimes, the glass actually breaks. But for most of the time, the dissent is permitted. The anger is licensed. The screams echo but never shatter. You feel free, but your freedom is managed. So, next time you feel the urge to rebel, the surge of protest, the need to scream, ask, am I fighting inside the walls, or am I searching for the cracks? Am I performing dissent, or am I risking something real? Because true rebellion doesn't echo, it ruptures. It doesn't just shake the walls, it brings them down. The controlled dissent mechanism is powerful, but it's only as strong as your willingness to accept the boundaries. The moment you see the walls, name them, and refuse to accept them as inevitable, that's the moment real change, dangerous change, becomes possible. And when enough voices stop echoing and start cracking, when the glass finally breaks, everything can change. But only if you dare to go beyond the walls they made for you. You wake to a world in crisis. Sirens blare, headlines scream. Fear pulses through every screen. There's chaos on the streets, unrest in the air, anxiety coiling in the pit of your stomach. You look for answers. Someone to blame, someone to trust, someone to save you. And then, like clockwork, the savior appears. The same hand that fanned the flames now holds the hose. The same face that set the trap now holds the key. You're told to feel safe, to feel grateful, even as the memory of who started the fire begins to blur. This is the false flag perception loop, the most insidious game ever played with your reality. Imagine a puppeteer orchestrating both the panic and the peace, fabricating the threat, then choreographing the rescue. You become so desperate for relief that you don't notice the circular trap closing in. The mind recoils from the possibility. Who wants to believe their guardian is the architect of their suffering? But history is littered with these performances. A government stages an attack to justify war or emergency powers. A company lets a crisis fester, only to swoop in with the miracle cure, priced just right. The hand that strikes vanishes into the shadows, reappearing as the benevolent force. You see it in the news. Policies introduced to combat problems that were quietly allowed, or even encouraged, to spiral out of control. You see it in personal relationships too. The abuser who wounds, then comforts. The manipulator who isolates, then consoles. Each act of harm is paired with a show of healing, and gratitude blooms where suspicion should have taken root. Let's dig deeper. Why does this work so well? Because chaos is exhausting. When fear saturates your world, the mind becomes desperate for order. It doesn't matter if the order comes from the same source as the disorder. You crave stability, an end to the uncertainty. The brain is wired to recognize patterns, to cling to any relief, even when it's offered by the architect of your pain. This is how the abuser cultivates loyalty. They create a crisis, offer themselves as the only solution, and in your relief, you forget to question. You even thank them. Think about how this plays out on a global scale. False flag operations, events staged to look like they were carried out by someone else, have been used for centuries to manipulate entire populations. The Reichstag fire in 1930s Germany, blamed on communists but used as a pretext to seize power. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, which triggered massive escalation in Vietnam. Each time, chaos was engineered, fear was magnified, and those in power rode in as the rescuers. The cycle is as old as civilization itself. But you don't need to look to history books to see the loop. It happens in your personal life, too. In toxic families, in workplaces, in friendships poisoned by control. The same person who tears you down will be the one to comfort you. The same partner who causes the drama will be the one who dries your tears. You learn to crave their approval, to see their occasional kindness as salvation, not a calculated reset. Over time, your sense of reality blurs. You can't tell who's the villain and who's the hero. Sometimes they're the same. The false flag perception loop doesn't just manipulate events, it rewires your emotional responses. Relief becomes gratitude. Gratitude becomes loyalty. Loyalty becomes blindness. You defend your savior, not realizing they built the prison. The cycle deepens every time you rationalize the pain, telling yourself it wasn't so bad, that the good times make up for the bad. You internalize the narrative. The world is dangerous, but you are lucky to have your rescuer. But here's the real twist. The cycle is self-perpetuating. The more times you experience it, the harder it is to see. You're conditioned to expect chaos, to feel relief only when your abuser provides it. The outside world seems even more unstable, while your captor seems more and more essential. Your vision narrows until you can't imagine any other reality. You thank the hand that binds you, praise the mind that misleads you. This loop is not just a psychological trick. It is a method of social control, a way to keep entire populations compliant. Manufacture the crisis, then manufacture consent. Tear down the structure, then sell the blueprint for rebuilding. Each cycle makes you weaker, more dependent, less able to imagine breaking free. You become loyal to the source of your pain because you cannot remember a world where you weren't hurt and then rescued. So, how do you escape? The first step is brutal honesty. You must see the pattern, even when it hurts. You must ask the forbidden questions. Who benefits from this crisis? Who profits from my pain? Who always seems to show up with the solution? You must separate the hand that comforts from the hand that strikes, even if they are attached to the same arm. You must learn to distrust easy answers, especially when they come from those who thrive on disorder. The next step is to rebuild your sense of self. You cannot trust those who engineered your dependency to teach you how to be free. You must relearn how to provide your own stability, your own sense of safety. You must reconnect with others who see the loop for what it is, who remember what true safety, true calm, actually feel like. The false flag perception loop is a prison with invisible walls. The more you thank your abuser, the thicker those walls become. But the moment you recognize the pattern, the illusion starts to crack. You stop giving your gratitude to the architect of your pain. You start to imagine another way. A world where chaos is not manufactured, where calm is not a bribe, where healing is not another form of control. In the end, the power to break the loop is yours. It starts with seeing clearly, even when the truth burns. It grows as you reclaim your agency, step by step, learning to recognize comfort that isn't laced with poison. And it ends when you refuse to thank the hand that wounded you, choosing instead to reach for the freedom that was stolen by the illusion. The calm you deserve is not the calm that follows chaos. It's the peace that was yours before the loop began. You think your thoughts are your own, that your mind is a boundless sky, free to wander, invent, dream, and question. But what if it isn't? What if every idea that comes easily to you, every conclusion that feels obvious, every meme, trend, or common sense belief, was not the product of curiosity, but the consequence of invisible design? Welcome to the thought funnel trap, where the entire spectrum of human imagination is squeezed through a narrow, silent corridor, and you never even notice the walls closing in. It starts with a question, not the one you ask, but the ones you don't. Maybe you're online, scrolling endlessly. You see certain topics rise and fall, dominating the feed, while others, just as real, just as important, vanish without a trace. Algorithms surface what is popular, or what is profitable, or what is permitted. The rest slips into digital shadow. This isn't about censorship by brute force. It's more insidious. It's curation, by platform, by publisher, by advertiser, by unseen hands tuning the parameters of acceptable thought. The effect is gradual, almost invisible. Only certain ideas are promoted, others buried. Slowly the world you imagine becomes a hallway with no windows. Picture your mind as a mansion with 1,000 rooms, each room a possibility, a new perspective. But the lights only work in a handful of these rooms. The rest are locked, forgotten, their doors overgrown with the vines of disuse. The longer you live in this house, the less you remember those other rooms even exist. You don't miss what you never see. You become comfortable with the familiar, grateful for what's left. And over time, your world becomes smaller, simpler, more predictable. This is not a mistake. It's a mechanism. The thought funnel trap is engineered by design, but maintained by habit. Platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, they don't show you everything. They show you what keeps you engaged, what makes you scroll, what serves the needs of those who built the algorithm. You start to believe that what is visible is all that matters. But beneath the surface is an ocean of unspoken, unshared, unamplified thought. Entire universes of knowledge, stories, warnings, and alternatives, left to drown in digital silence. Consider the history of suppressed ideas. Galileo, forced to recant his truth about the stars. Whistleblowers, erased by the noise of entertainment. Dissident thinkers who vanish from search results, whose work is labeled as irrelevant or dangerous. It doesn't matter if they are right or wrong. What matters is that you don't get to choose what you see. You only get to choose from what is offered. Over time, the thought funnel trap doesn't just limit what you know, and it rewrites your sense of what's possible. You stop asking dangerous questions. You hesitate before clicking on certain links, worried about what it might mean for your reputation, your safety, your job, your place in society. This self-censorship is the ultimate victory of the funnel. When you begin to patrol your own borders, silencing the stray thought before it even reaches your lips, the evidence is everywhere. Ask yourself, how many times have you seen the same handful of approved narratives dominating discussion, while other viewpoints are mocked, dismissed, or ignored? Why do certain stories go viral, while others are shadow banned, throttled, or simply never trend? How does the recommended for you feed shape not just your entertainment, but your beliefs about the world, about other people, about what is possible, permissible, and real? Look closer, and you'll see the patterns. Search for a controversial topic, and you're steered toward the official explanation. Read the comments, and notice how dissent is buried, downvoted, or erased by waves of bots and outrage. Even the language you use is preloaded with assumptions, definitions, and emotional triggers handed down by those who designed the funnel. Words are weaponized, questions become traps. The result is a slow, suffocating constriction of possibility. The thought funnel doesn't slam doors. It pads the hallway with soft, unthreatening wallpaper, so you never realize how much you've lost. You are not chained. You are lulled. And so, as you walk, your steps become quieter, your voice fainter, your curiosity less hungry. You accept the world as it's presented because it's exhausting to fight the flow. This isn't about paranoia. It's about recognizing that freedom of thought isn't just the absence of censorship, but the presence of diversity, conflict, noise, and contradiction. The world is not a single hallway. It is a maze, a garden, a galaxy of perspectives. But the thought funnel trap turns it into a corridor, dim and unending, with mirrors on either side reflecting only what is allowed. The consequences are profound. When only certain ideas are amplified, entire cultures can be steered like cattle, toward war, toward panic, toward consumerism, toward docility. Societies can be made to forget their history, to unsee injustice, to rewrite the past in real time. Whole generations can be born into the funnel, never realizing the world could have been different, that their lives are shaped by the silences between the headlines. But there's a way out. Not an easy way, not a quick way, but a way nonetheless. It starts by doubting the default, by noticing what's missing, by hunting for the rooms in your mental mansion that are still locked and forcing open the doors. It means seeking out banned books, forbidden opinions, inconvenient data. It means being willing to be uncomfortable, to risk being wrong, to challenge the comfort of curated thought. True freedom isn't just the ability to speak. It's the courage to search for the thoughts you were never meant to find. Remember this: a mind confined to the thought funnel. Trap is a mind slowly starving, convinced the rations are a feast. The world you imagine is only as large as the ideas you are permitted to explore. To break free is to rebuild your world, room by room, until the hallway becomes a universe again. Don't wait for someone else to unlock the doors. Start now. Wander, question, refuse the narrow path. Because the future of your imagination depends on how bravely you escape the funnel and rediscover the infinite landscape of thought that was always your birthright. Manufactured addiction patterns. There's a machinery at work in your life, subtle, invisible, and relentless. It doesn't break down your door, it creeps in quietly, reshaping your wants, your needs, your identity. It isn't just about chemical addiction, or even the things you crave. It's about dependency, manufactured and engineered by forces that want not just your time, but your loyalty, your very sense of self. You think you're choosing, but behind the curtain, there's a blueprint, a protocol, designing every cue, every craving, every spiral. This is the reality of manufactured addiction patterns. Addiction isn't just something that happens to weak people. It isn't limited to drugs or alcohol. Look around. You'll see it in the glow of screens late at night, in the crunch of processed snacks, in the endless scroll, in the need to check for likes or messages, in the feeling that something terrible will happen if you ever, even for a moment, unplug. You're not broken. You're responding to systems designed to hook you, systems that understand the architecture of the human mind, the chemistry of anticipation, and the currency of loyalty. It starts with food. The bliss point wasn't an accident, it was invented. Scientists paid by corporations discovered exactly how much salt, sugar, and fat it takes to keep your brain wanting more. Every chip, every sweet, every fizzy drink is engineered, not for taste, but for dependency. The formula is simple. Make it so satisfying you can't stop, but never so filling you want to. Each bite is a microdose of pleasure followed by a whisper of hunger, an itch that can never be scratched. Your loyalty, bought for a fraction of a penny per serving, is measured in lifelong purchases. The withdrawal, hunger, restlessness, craving, feels like betrayal, like the world took something from you, like you lost a friend. But food is just the opening act. The real spectacle begins with screens. Your phone is not a neutral tool. It is a slot machine that fits in your pocket. Each swipe or notification a tiny gamble, a hope for reward. The apps you use, the videos you watch, the games you play, the news you read, each one is optimized to capture your attention and hold it hostage. Algorithms don't just predict your behavior, they shape it. They learn what makes you angry, what makes you sad, what makes you laugh, and they feed you more. Each tap is a hook. Each like is bait. Every streak you maintain, every one more episode, every urge to check your device before bed, these are the symptoms of a system that understands dopamine better than you do. Social media isn't a meeting place. It's a market, one where your time, your outrage, your joy, and your despair are auctioned off to the highest bidder. The more you engage, the deeper you fall. When you try to step away, you feel the pang, the emptiness, the gnawing sense that you're missing something crucial. That's withdrawal, engineered by design. You feel alone, disconnected, anxious. It's not just FOMO. It's your nervous system recalibrating to a reality where the world is not built to constantly gratify you. And what about security? They sell you a world where danger is everywhere, on the news, in the neighborhood, in the products you use, the strangers you pass. Security becomes a product, not a feeling. Cameras for your home, insurance for your health, constant tracking of your every move. The message is always the same. You are not safe, but we can make you feel safe, for a price. The dependence grows with every headline, every breaking news alert, every story of disaster. You start to crave certainty, reassurance, protection. When you try to break free, to risk living with a little more uncertainty, your anxiety surges. That too is withdrawal, the engineered pain of a world where security is never free. But the most insidious dependency of all is fear itself. Fear is currency, and those who control it control you. Politicians, advertisers, media moguls, they understand that a scared brain is an obedient brain. If you're always anxious, always on alert, you are easy to manipulate. Every new threat, every outrage cycle, every looming disaster is an opportunity to reinforce your dependence on their narratives, their solutions, their leadership. You start to depend on them not just for information, but for emotional stability. You become loyal to your captors, defending the very systems that keep you afraid. Try to pull away, to unplug, to question the narrative, and you feel a sense of betrayal, as if you're cheating on something sacred. This is how manufactured addiction works. The world offers you comfort and pleasure and certainty, but always with strings attached. You're not just buying a product or a service. You're buying into a loop. The cycle is simple. Hook you, satisfy you, leave you wanting more, then sell you the fix. Repeat until loyalty is indistinguishable from survival. Think of the child given a tablet to quiet their boredom. Soon, nothing else is enough. Books are too slow, conversation is too quiet, nature is too still. The device becomes a pacifier, then a lifeline. Remove it, and watch the meltdown. Withdrawal, even at age 6. Or consider the adult who can't fall asleep without background noise. Podcasts, TV, endless music, never a moment of true silence. The idea of being alone with their thoughts is intolerable. Silence is no longer peace, it's emptiness, a withdrawal symptom from the world's endless stimulation. Even our relationships aren't immune. Swipe culture gamifies romance, turning longing and affection into addictive microtransactions. The endless potential matches, the high of a new message, the crash of being ghosted. All engineered to keep you swiping, longing, addicted. You're not looking for love, you're chasing the next hit of validation. The withdrawal from all this is not just physical, it's existential. When you try to break free, when you eat real food, turn off the notifications, walk outside without your phone, sit in true silence, you feel not just discomfort, but betrayal. The world seems colder, emptier. You wonder what you're missing. You feel a hole where the stimulation used to be. The system has taught you that discomfort is the enemy, that boredom is dangerous, that silence is a threat. But here's the brutal truth. Your dependence is not an accident. It was built brick by people who understood exactly how to make you come back for more. They engineered your cravings, then offered themselves as the only cure. And every time you try to break away, every pang of withdrawal is a reminder. Your loyalty is no longer a choice. It's a debt. Some will tell you that you're weak for falling for it, that if you just had more willpower, you'd be free. But that's another part of the pattern, making you feel responsible for chains you never forged. The world is full of brilliant people, strong people, who are just as trapped. Because the trap is not stupidity. The trap is design. There's only one way out. See the pattern. Recognize the architecture of your own craving. Notice when pleasure comes with a cost, when comfort comes with a hook, when security is just another leash. The first step is awareness. The second is resistance. Turn off the screen. Cook your own food. Walk in silence. Let yourself feel the sting of withdrawal, not as a sign of failure, but as proof that you're breaking free. You will feel alone. You will feel the loss. That's how you know you're escaping the gravity well of manufactured addiction. But beyond the pain, there is a world that is not engineered for your dependence, a world that is yours to rediscover. Loyalty is not something to be bought, it's something to be earned. And the only loyalty worth having is the kind you choose, not the kind you're programmed for. So, the next time you reach for comfort, distraction, reassurance, pause. Ask yourself, is this what I want or is this what I've been trained to crave? That's the crack in the pattern. The place where your freedom begins. The moment you remember that you are not just a consumer, not just a target, not just a captive audience. You are the architect of your own attention. And the chains? They were never yours to wear. Narrative echo chambers. You think you're choosing what to believe. You think your worldview is yours, shaped by experience, facts, the slow accumulation of knowledge. But what if it's not? What if the reality you inhabit is a carefully engineered mirror, reflecting only what you already believe, what you already love or hate or fear? This is the trap of the narrative echo chamber, a place so subtle, so immersive, that you can live your whole life inside it and never see the walls. You don't build the echo chamber alone. It's built for you, algorithm by algorithm, friend by friend, preference by preference, until the world outside its walls becomes unthinkable. It starts so innocently. You like a video, you read an article, you follow a page, a person, a movement. The system notices. The algorithms begin to shift, to tilt, to to lean gently in your direction. It's a small nudge at first. One more video like the last. One more voice that echoes what you feel. You don't notice the change, not at first. It feels like comfort. It feels like home. It feels like you are finally surrounded by people who get it. People who see the world as you do, who confirm your deepest convictions, who validate your sense of right and wrong. But as the days and months pass, the walls close in. The feeds fill with sameness. The voices grow louder, more certain, less tolerant of doubt. The unfamiliar, the uncomfortable, the dissenting, they fade away, blocked or banned, or simply buried by the algorithm. Your world shrinks, but your certainty grows. Every scroll, every click, every like sharpens the blade. You stop encountering disagreement. You start mistaking comfort for truth. And when a foreign idea finally does break through, a headline, a comment, a question, you don't just reject it. You recoil from it. You feel attacked, offended, violated. You've forgotten what it's like to be challenged. Real life, real society is messy. It's chaotic, painful, full of contradiction and debate. But inside the narrative echo chamber, everything fits together. There are heroes and villains. There is clarity. There are no gray areas. The truth isn't something you search for anymore. It's something you feel. And if someone questions it, they're not just wrong. They're dangerous. The other becomes an enemy. Doubt becomes betrayal. Certainty becomes identity. Think about social media, how it decides what you see. If you linger on outrage, it gives you more outrage. If you engage with conspiracy, it spins you deeper. The platforms say they just want you to enjoy your experience, but in reality, they're mining your psychology, mapping your desires, your fears, your prejudices, and building you a customized prison. You are not the customer. You are the product. Your attention is being auctioned to the highest bidder, and what keeps you glued to the screen is never nuance or complexity. It's confirmation. You keep scrolling, not because you're learning, but because you're being fed more and more of yourself. You see it in politics, in religion, in every social cause. Sides are drawn, narratives are crafted, and the people inside the chamber become ever more radical, ever more certain that they are right, that the others are wrong, that there is no room for dialogue or compromise. Reality splits. Two people living in the same city, on the same street, can inhabit completely different worlds, unable even to agree on the basic facts. And when the echo chambers collide, there is no discussion, only shouting, only violence, only the brittle clatter of two realities smashing against each other. This isn't new. Propaganda is as old as civilization. Every regime, every cult, every tyrant has built echo chambers through control of the press, through religious dogma, through the rewriting of history. But what's new now is the scale, the intimacy, the speed, the technology. The echo chamber is in your pocket, on your wrist, in your bedroom, whispering to you while you sleep. It's no longer a matter of state or of ideology. It's personal. It's you, tailored and reflected back over and over until the edges blur and the mirror becomes the world. This is how polarization grows. This is how empathy dies. When you no longer encounter the other, when the other becomes a monster, a fool, a meme, a stereotype, you lose the ability to imagine their pain, their story, their humanity. You forget that other minds exist. You forget that you are not the center of the universe. You forget that truth is something larger than comfort, something that must be wrestled with, not merely accepted. Consider the way cults work. They isolate you from dissent. They demand loyalty, conformity, the suppression of doubt. The internet can be a cult of one if you let it. The narrative echo chamber tells you, you are right, they are wrong. There is nothing left to learn. And once you accept this, you stop growing. You calcify. You become fragile, brittle, unable to adapt to a world that is always changing. It's not just about big issues either. It happens in families, in friend groups, in workplaces. The same stories are told, the same jokes are shared, the same grievances are rehearsed. Anyone who questions the group narrative is shut out, frozen, shamed. Over time, the group becomes an echo of itself, losing diversity, losing creativity, losing the very spark that made it alive. And here's the hardest truth. You can't see your own echo chamber from the inside. you need friction. You need challenge. You need to feel discomfort. That's the signal that you're brushing up against the edges of your own reality, the warning that you're about to learn something, or at least remember that your mind is not the only mind that exists. But the system is designed to keep you comfortable, to keep you sedated, to keep you from ever seeing the bars of your own cage. The price of living in a narrative echo chamber is not just ignorance, it's loneliness. Because if you can only love those who reflect you, you will always be alone, even in a crowd. If you can only trust those who echo your beliefs, you will never know the joy of genuine connection, of real debate, of the hard, slow, necessary work of building truth together out of disagreement. But you can escape. You can break the glass. It's not easy. It means seeking out voices that unsettle you. It means asking questions that have no easy answers. It means admitting over and over that you might be wrong, that you might not know everything, that the world is bigger than the story you tell yourself. That truth is not always comfortable. That comfort is not always truth. The next time you feel the rush of certainty, the glow of validation, the comfort of seeing your beliefs reflected everywhere, pause. Ask yourself, is this real, or is this just the echo? Is this truth, or is this just the comfort of the familiar? Who built this story, and who profits from my belief in it? Who am I without the mirror? Because the greatest danger of the narrative echo chamber isn't that you're wrong, it's that you never get the chance to find out. That you live and die in a world made only of you, forgetting that other minds, other hearts, other truths exist. That you miss the wild, terrifying, beautiful complexity of the real world, with all its contradiction and discomfort. That you never escape the echo, and never even know that you were trapped. This is the danger of the narrative echo chamber. Not just that it lies to you, but that it makes you forget there ever was a truth to seek. That it turns comfort into prison, certainty into blindness, and your own reflection into the only world you'll ever see. Perpetual emergency mode. The siren never stops. It just changes pitch. Some days it's the threat of terrorism. Other days it's a virus on the loose, a financial meltdown, a looming cyber attack, or the whispered promise of chaos around every corner. But one thing never changes, the feeling that you are living in a world where the emergency never ends. The alarm is always on, and over time, you forget what silence even sounds like. This is perpetual emergency mode, a reality where crisis isn't an exception, but the baseline, where fear isn't a moment, but an atmosphere. It wraps around you like a second skin. And while you're distracted by the next headline, the next countdown, the next breathless broadcast, something more insidious takes root. Your sense of normal shrinks, the price of safety rises, and you begin to accept a new kind of control, not because you want to, but because you've been told there's no other way to survive. Let's dig into how it works. In the past, emergencies were rare. A war, a disaster, a plague, events that broke the world, then faded away. People braced, endured, rebuilt, life resumed. But now, the exception has become the rule. Each crisis bleeds into the next. They stack, overlap, and mutate. There's always a reason to be afraid. Always a reason to look to someone else for protection. And always a reason to sacrifice just a little more of your freedom, your privacy, your quiet. When the world is in perpetual emergency mode, the usual rules don't apply. Leaders invoke the language of urgency. We must act now. This is not the time for debate. Extraordinary times require extraordinary measures, and so, surveillance cameras go up, police powers expand, censorship tightens, apps track your movements, new laws arrive, always temporary, but somehow they never go away. You tell yourself it's necessary. You trade privacy for safety, liberty for order, transparency for the comfort of feeling watched over. Each surrender is small, almost invisible. A camera on every corner, a database for your face. Your emails, your calls, your thoughts run through 100 silent filters. You can still speak, but you wonder who's listening. You can still move, but you sense you are always being watched. It starts with something real, a genuine threat, maybe a devastating attack or a mysterious new disease. The fear is raw, the need for action urgent, and so, new powers are invoked. Emergency measures, curfews, checkpoints, lockdowns, military patrols spring up overnight. People grumble, but they comply. After all, survival is at stake. But as the days pass and the crisis lingers, the boundaries blur. The emergency becomes the new normal. You stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, what's next? The list of forbidden things grows. The list of required behaviors expands. Neighbors report on neighbors. Suspicion blooms. Safety becomes a currency, and the cost is your consent. History offers a grim playbook. After 9/11s, whole populations accepted mass surveillance, secret courts, no-fly lists, detention without trial, all justified by an endless war on terror. When the threat was everywhere, so too were the eyes and ears of the state. When the pandemic struck, apps tracked every cough, every contact, every step. It's only for now, they said. But the data didn't disappear. The power didn't recede. The systems remained, quietly growing stronger. Perpetual emergency mode is not just about laws or cameras, it's about the mind. The constant hum of threat rewires your instincts. You stop trusting strangers. You watch what you say, even to friends. You self-censor, not because you're told to, but because you can feel the pressure. The gaze of the unseen, always watching, always judging, waiting for a mistake. This is how a free society becomes a silent one. Not overnight, not with tanks in the street, but with quiet, relentless pressure. You learn to live with anxiety. You adapt to the tension. You trade questions for obedience. You accept that being left alone is the reward for good behavior. Even rebellion is shaped by emergency. Not now, they say. There's a crisis. Wait your turn. Don't rock the boat. Protest becomes dangerous, discussion subversive. You hesitate, then you stop. The fear of making things worse outweighs the hope of making things better. And so, the world shrinks. Not in geography, but in possibility. The future becomes a hallway of locked doors. You don't remember when you stopped expecting freedom. You just remember the day you realized you missed it. Why does this work? Because fear is powerful. Because when the threat feels endless, you crave certainty more than liberty. You want someone to say, "I've got this, just do as I say." You want the comfort of an answer, even if the price is your autonomy. But the real danger of perpetual emergency mode is not just that it takes your freedom. It makes you forget you ever had it. It turns vigilance into habit, suspicion into culture, silence into virtue. It makes surveillance seem like compassion, obedience like wisdom, submission like strength. Yet, every now and then, the curtain slips. A whistleblower leaks the truth. A journalist risks everything. Someone remembers what it was like to walk untracked, to speak unmonitored, to imagine a future that wasn't just a string of red alerts. And for a moment, you see the cage for what it is. But the siren returns. The fear returns. And the world shrinks again. Is this inevitable? Only if you let it be. The first step is to see it, to name the spell, to recognize the price you're paying for the illusion of safety, to remember that real security cannot exist without real freedom, that sometimes the greatest risk is to live in a world where risk has been banished, along with choice, with trust, with hope. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt safe? Was it because you were protected or because you were free? What would you trade for that feeling? And when the next emergency arrives, because it always does, will you give away another piece of yourself? Or will you finally draw the line? Perpetual emergency mode is a trap disguised as shelter, a siren song that never ends. But you are not powerless. You can remember. You can resist. You can demand a world where fear is not the architect of your life. And when enough people remember, the siren finally falls silent. Not because the world is safe, but because you have decided that living is worth the risk. Algorithmic reality filters. You wake up and reach for your phone before your feet hit the floor. Notifications blink, headlines, memes, breaking news, friend requests. Each tap and swipe pulls you deeper into a stream of information. Seamless, endless, tailored to you. But have you ever stopped to wonder, is this really the world as it is? Or just a shadow play, flickering and receding, controlled by silent algorithms that filter what you see, hear, and know? This is the age of algorithmic reality filters. An invisible layer stands between you and the raw world, sifting, sorting, reshaping every experience. You don't just see content, You see what has been selected for you by systems too complex to fathom and too fast to challenge. Your newsfeed, your trending videos, the jokes you laugh at, the outrage you feel, all are curated, nudged, and reinforced by code written in boardrooms, fueled by data you never meant to give. Think about your social media. Two people in the same city, living on the same street, may wake up to entirely different realities. One sees news about war and disaster. The other, cat videos and food hacks. One's feed pulses with political outrage, the other's with self-care and positivity. Each is certain they're seeing what matters, what is real. But in truth, both are trapped inside bespoke bubbles, separated by invisible glass. You are not just living your life. You are living a life filtered for you, by forces you can neither see nor question. It goes deeper. Every click you make, every article you linger on, every photo you like, is fed back into the system, teaching the algorithm what to show you next. You become both the subject and the architect of your own reality tunnel. The more you engage, the more tightly the system winds itself around your preferences. Dissenting voices fade out. Contradictory facts vanish. Outlier opinions are buried by the tide of what you already believe, want, and expect. The world becomes strangely familiar, oddly comforting, deeply predictable, until you can't remember what unfiltered reality feels like. The most dangerous part? You don't notice it happening. There is no flicker, no warning, no red flag. Your reality is seamless, self-reinforcing, perfectly logical. The outrage you feel is confirmed by headlines tailored to provoke you. The laughter you share is echoed by millions in your digital tribe, all seeing the same meme, all riding the same wave. You start to believe that your reality is the reality, that those who disagree are wrong, deluded, maybe even dangerous. Your identity calcifies inside the filter bubble, mistaking curation for truth. The consequences ripple far beyond your timeline. Elections are swung by algorithmic nudges, entire nations divided by filtered narratives. The information you consume today shapes the beliefs you act on tomorrow. People are radicalized, not by facts, but by feedback loops. Echo chambers engineered for engagement, not enlightenment. The algorithm does not care about truth, only about attention. If anger gets clicks, anger spreads. If fear keeps you scrolling, fear multiplies. Reality bends around the will of the code, but it doesn't stop there. Even your sense of self becomes a product of algorithmic curation. Your playlists, your dating profiles, your ads, every suggestion, every match, every purchase is a reflection of what the system thinks you want. You may believe you're unique, spontaneous, unpredictable, but the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. It predicts your next move, your next thought, your next desire. Your preferences are not your own. They are the sum of 1,000 micro-nudges. Invisible hands steering you down carefully selected paths. It's easy to blame technology, to point fingers at the platforms, the engineers, the CEOs. But the truth is, the algorithmic filter exists because we asked for it. We wanted convenience, speed, relevance, comfort. We wanted to be seen, heard, and understood. Instantly. The system gave us what we wanted, then gave us more, until what we wanted became all we could see. We traded the chaos of the world for the comfort of the curated, and in doing so, we lost something essential, the ability to confront reality as it is, not just as we wish it to be. So, what do you do when you realize the glass is there? When you catch a glimpse of the machinery behind the curtain? The first step is awareness. Notice the invisible boundaries of your information diet. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? Whose voices are missing from my world? What facts are filtered out by my feed? Seek out discomfort. Find perspectives that jar, challenge, unsettle you. Let friction be a signal, not a threat. The next step is to reclaim your agency. Refuse to be a passive consumer of curated reality. Curate your own inputs, actively, not just by clicking what's easy or familiar. Read widely, listen deeply, question relentlessly. Step outside your comfort bubble. Unfollow the rage merchants, the clickbaiters, the purveyors of easy certainty. Demand more from your digital life than endless, frictionless agreement. And finally, remember, reality is messy, contradictory, complex. It cannot be captured by any feed, any filter, any algorithm. The world is bigger than your bubble, richer than your recommendations, more mysterious than your trending tab. True freedom begins when you see the filter and choose every day to look beyond it. In a world curated by invisible hands, your vision is the last frontier. Guard it, challenge it, and never mistake the feed for the full sky. Justice Theater Illusion. You sit in front of a screen, a phone, a television, maybe even a wooden bench in a crowded courtroom. The lights are harsh. The stage is set. All eyes are drawn to the spectacle, the trial, the outrage, the apology, the verdict. It feels real. You want it to be real. You want to believe that what you are witnessing is justice unfolding, raw, unscripted, uncorrupted. But deep down, in a place you rarely admit even to yourself, you feel the quiet tug of doubt, the nagging sense that what you're watching is not justice, but a performance. Welcome to the Justice Theater Illusion, where the stage is always set, the actors always rehearsed, and the outcome, no matter how chaotic, serves a script you will never read. In the Justice Theater, trials are played out for the masses like dramas, complete with villains and heroes, gasps of outrage, crocodile tears, and climactic monologues. The media becomes your usher, guiding your eyes to what matters and away from what doesn't. The camera zooms in on trembling hands, defiant faces, broken voices. It offers you close-ups of pain and bravado, shame and redemption. You are invited to judge, to cheer, to jeer, to join in the ritual of public reckoning. But behind the curtain, the real decisions are already made. The outcome is not determined by truth, but by the needs of the system. The outrage must be managed. The apologies must be timed. The illusion must be maintained. Look closer. Every year, a new scandal. A public figure exposed, a corporation caught, a celebrity disgraced. The process is as predictable as clockwork. Exposure, denial, outrage, apology, trial, verdict, redemption, or exile. You see it so often that it becomes routine. A script so familiar that you can mouth the words before the actors even step on stage. But the faces change, not the roles. Those in power remain in power. The same hands pull the strings. Sometimes, even the fall guys return later, laundered by time and fresh PR campaigns, ready to play their part once more. In the Justice Theater, you are made to feel as if you have a stake in the process. Hashtags trend. Memes circulate. Outrage boils over in the streets and in the comments. You are invited to participate, to become the jury, the executioner, the chorus demanding catharsis. But what you rarely see is the machinery operating out of sight. The private meetings, the sealed deals, the decisions that are never put on trial. The actors perform for your approval, but the real action happens off stage, where power protects itself, and change is surface deep. Consider the apologies you've seen. They are choreographed with surgical precision. Tears well at the right moment. Words are chosen for maximum impact. Mistake, regret, learning. You are supposed to forgive, to feel closure, to believe that wrongs have been addressed. But watch what happens next. The structures that allowed the wrongdoing remain untouched. The systems that produce the injustice stay standing, unshaken. The performance ends, but the actors never change roles. Those who benefit from the system are never truly threatened. The show must go on. Think about high-profile cases where the entire world watches a single courtroom. The language is dramatic, the stakes sky-high. But for every televised trial, 1,000 others unfold in obscurity. Quiet, unseen, undramatic. Their outcomes shaped not by evidence or law, but by resources, connections, invisible hands. The Justice Theater draws your attention to the spectacle, so you never ask about what's happening in the shadows. The illusion works because you want to believe. You need to believe that justice is possible, that wrongs are punished, that good prevails over evil. Society cannot function without this faith, so the illusion is maintained at all costs. The press releases are written, the statements rehearsed, the villains painted in black and white. Occasionally, a scapegoat is sacrificed, a token of change is offered up to the public, hunger for resolution. The curtain falls, applause or outrage dies down, and the system resets for the next act. Ask yourself, when was the last time a public scandal resulted in real structural change? When was the last time an apology actually rewrote the rules, or a trial ended with more than a headline? More often than not, the outrage is spent, the cycle repeats, and the same actors emerge with new costumes. The stage never changes, only the lighting shifts. It is not that all justice is fake. There are moments of real accountability, real reckoning, real loss, but these are rare, and they threaten the illusion, not support it. The theater is there to absorb the blow, to keep the masses focused on the spectacle, while the machinery of power continues its slow, relentless churn. In this world, truth is a prop, wielded when convenient and discarded when dangerous. Outrage is manufactured, focused, and dissipated according to the needs of the script. Apologies are timed for ratings, not for healing. The system survives because the audience accepts the show as reality, forgetting that the actors work for someone else entirely. So the next time you find yourself drawn into a public trial, a wave of outrage, a carefully crafted apology, pause. Look for the strings. Ask who stands to gain, who vanishes when the spotlight swings away, who returns for the next act unchanged. Justice is not served by spectacle, nor by the rituals of public shame. It is found, if it is found at all, in the hard, hidden work of changing systems, not just swapping actors. The Justice Theater illusion will always tempt you with its drama, its clarity, its catharsis. But true justice is slow, complex, uncomfortable, and almost never televised. Refuse the easy comfort of the spectacle. Seek the stories that don't make the stage. Because as long as you accept the performance, the actors will never change roles. And the real script, written backstage, beyond your reach, will keep repeating again and again until the final curtain never falls. Loyalty guilt programming. You are taught to love with conditions you never agreed to. From your earliest days, there is a silent lesson pulsing beneath every rule, every ritual, every promise, that to love is to obey, and to question is to betray. They do not say it outright. They do not need to. The programming begins with 1,000 tiny cues, the disappointed glance, the tightened voice, the warning about respect. You learn to equate doubt with danger and obedience with safety. This is the machinery of loyalty guilt programming. Imagine being raised in a world where love feels like a currency, and every act of independence is a withdrawal. You begin to notice it early. The moment you ask, why? And the room grows cold. The first time you say, I disagree, and the warmth leaves their faces. It is not the words that wound you, but the silence, the sense that your place, your security, is suddenly in question. This is how it starts. The quiet punishment, the withdrawal of affection, the sudden wall that rises whenever you step out of line. In families, it wears the mask of tradition. We do things this way. You owe us your loyalty. Don't you trust your own blood? Every holiday, every reunion is an invisible negotiation. Be yourself or be loved. Speak your mind or keep the peace. Your loyalty is measured in your ability to remain silent, to perform, to surrender. And the cost of questioning, even gently, even with love, is a guilt so sharp it slices through your sense of self. You are told, sometimes with tears, that your doubts are a knife in their heart, that your independence is a betrayal, that if you loved them, you would not hurt them with your questions. But the programming doesn't stop at home. It follows you into every system, schools, offices, entire nations. In classrooms, obedience is rewarded, curiosity is managed, dissent is punished with grades or shame. In workplaces, loyalty is defined as silence in the face of injustice, devotion to the team above truth. The message is clear. Don't challenge the group. Don't make trouble. Don't ask for better. The price for speaking up is exile. The reward for surrender is belonging. And what about relationships? You are taught that love means never doubting, never disagreeing, never wanting more than what is offered. The person who asks for honesty or change is accused of not loving enough. The one who questions is made to feel unsafe, unstable, unworthy. The programming is perfected here. Love equals obedience, safety equals surrender. Your doubts become betrayals. Your needs become evidence of your disloyalty. The more you give up, the safer you feel, until the safety itself becomes a prison. This is not just a trick of individuals. It is a blueprint for entire cultures. Religions preach faith as loyalty, doubt as sin. Governments reward conformity and criminalize resistance. Even in friend groups and fandoms, the line is drawn. If you're not with us, you're against us. Social media amplifies the code, turning every disagreement into a crisis, every question into a declaration of war. You learn to mute your doubts, to hide your differences, to blend in. You learn to survive not by thinking, but by belonging. The guilt is the lever. Every time you question, you feel the weight. The fear of rejection, the anxiety of being misunderstood, the ache of being alone. You remember all the times you lost love by speaking your truth, all the times you were punished for not fitting the mold. You tell yourself it's not worth the risk. You tell yourself love is better than freedom. You shrink. You nod along. You betray yourself before you would ever betray them. This pattern is not natural. It is manufactured, maintained, refined by those who benefit from your obedience. The more you internalize their rules, the easier you are to control. The more you equate loyalty with love, the harder it becomes to leave. Even when the rules become toxic, the leaders corrupt, the traditions empty. You hesitate, not because you agree, but because you cannot bear the guilt of betraying those who made you feel safe. Consider the child who grows up in a strict household, where questioning is met with icy stares, or worse. When she finally leaves, she finds herself repeating the same pattern with friends, lovers, bosses. She is loyal to a fault, terrified of disappointing, addicted to pleasing. When she finally stands up for herself, the guilt is overwhelming. She wonders if she is broken, if she is ungrateful, if she is betraying the very people who taught her to survive, or the employee in a corporate cult where company family is the highest ideal and questioning leadership is framed as disloyalty. Every doubt is seen as sabotage. Every independent thought is punished, sometimes subtly, sometimes brutally. The worker feels safer in silence, safer blending in. Even as the work becomes meaningless, the loyalty one-sided. The day he tries to speak up, he is made to feel like an outsider, a traitor, a problem. Or the activist who joins a cause out of passion and hope, only to find that dissent is not welcome. The group's loyalty code is rigid. Disagree, and you're exiled. Ask for accountability, and you're branded a betrayer. The activist must choose, toe the line, or lose the community that once felt like home. In every space, the programming is the same. Loyalty is the price of love, obedience the price of safety. The psychology is powerful. When you are punished for your doubts, your brain learns to associate safety with surrender. You become hypervigilant for signs of disapproval. You shrink your ambitions, soften your opinions, question your own reality. Over time, you stop noticing what you truly want. You stop asking the questions that once kept you alive. You forget how to imagine freedom. The cruelest twist is that, after a while, you become your own jailer. You silence your doubts before anyone else can. You anticipate the guilt and preemptively obey. The programming runs itself. Those in power need only to set the rules and let your guilt do the rest. This is how generations are controlled. Not with threats, but with love. Not with violence, but with belonging. But guilt, like any program, can be debugged. It starts with noticing the moment you hesitate, the second before you swallow your truth. What if questioning is not betrayal, but self-respect? What if love is not obedience, but honesty? What if safety is not surrender, but standing up for yourself, even when your voice shakes? It's terrifying, the first time you break the code. The guilt surges, the fear of exile is real, but on the other side is a new kind of loyalty, one based on truth, not control. Real love survives disagreement. Real loyalty thrives on honesty. The families, the workplaces, the groups that deserve you will make room for your doubts, your growth, your transformation. They will never demand that you betray yourself to belong. If questioning feels like betrayal, then you are living inside someone else's program. You are not a traitor for asking questions. You are not unlovable for wanting more. You are not unsafe for refusing to surrender. The only true betrayal is the one where you give up your own voice to make someone else feel powerful. That is not loyalty. That is captivity. And you were never born to be captive. So if you feel the guilt rising, if you hear the voice that says, "If you loved us, you would obey," pause. Ask who benefits from your silence. Ask if love that requires obedience is love at all. Loyalty is not the opposite of freedom. It is the child of it. And you deserve to be loyal to yourself first before anyone else. You can break the code. You can survive the guilt. You can love and question, belong and doubt, care and confront. The world needs more rebels who love, more lovers who question, more people brave enough to refuse the programming and demand something better, real safety, real love, real loyalty. And that begins the moment you refuse to equate silence with devotion and choose to stand in your own truth, even if your voice trembles. Information fatigue overload. You wake up and reach for your phone. Even before your eyes adjust to the morning light, information pours in. Messages, headlines, alerts, updates, opinions, facts, conspiracies, photos, videos, an endless cascade. You scroll, you swipe, you try to catch up. But it's impossible. Before you've even left your bed, you've consumed more raw data than most people saw in a month just a generation ago. And it doesn't stop. It accelerates. The average person is exposed to more information in a day than a medieval scholar would have in a lifetime. We call it being informed. We call it staying current. But what if the opposite is true? What if too much truth doesn't set you free? It traps you. What if the flood itself is the cage? This is information fatigue overload, a state of mind where too much truth, too many facts, too many versions become indistinguishable from lies. Not because you can't tell the difference, but because you can't process the difference. You're overwhelmed, saturated, exhausted. The brain wasn't built for this. The heart wasn't built for this. The soul was never meant to drown in this kind of noise. It starts with good intentions. You want to know the world. You want to be a responsible citizen, a critical thinker, someone who pays attention. But attention is finite. Every headline demands urgency. Every video is breaking. Every story is vital. Soon you start to realize there's no way to keep up. For every truth, there's a counter-narrative. For every statistic, a contradiction. For every hero, a villain. You want to believe you can separate signal from noise, but the noise gets louder. And the signal, the truth, starts to sound like just another frequency in the static. Imagine a world where every alarm is ringing, every siren blaring, every voice screaming at once. That's what your feed is. 1,000 emergencies, 1,000 must-see moments, all demanding your immediate attention. But the mind can't hold that much, so it copes, it adapts. At first, you try to care about everything, but caring burns energy. Caring hurts. Soon, numbness sets in. Numbness isn't weakness, it's survival. It's your brain's last line of defense against drowning in the torrent. Remember when the world felt smaller? When a big event would stop you in your tracks, force you to pause, make you reflect. Now, tragedy after tragedy scrolls past in an endless loop. Floods, wars, injustice, disasters. Each a headline, a hashtag, a trend for an hour before it's replaced by the next. You want to feel. You want to act. But you can't keep pace. Compassion fatigue sets in. You stop reacting. Not because you don't care, but because you can't care about everything. The flood steals your power to act, to grieve, to change. It's not just the volume of information. It's the contradiction, the confusion, the chaos. For every piece of evidence, there's a counterclaim. For every trusted source, there's a whisper of bias, a rumor of manipulation. The experts disagree. The authorities waver. The ground shifts beneath your feet, and you're left spinning, unsure who or what to trust. The more you know, the less certain you become. This is not an accident. There are those who understand this dynamic, who weaponize the flood. If the public is overwhelmed, if the truth is buried in a mountain of data, who can organize? Who can resist? The tools of suppression are no longer just censorship or force. They're excess, distraction, distortion. Flood the zone with noise, and the signal will die. If every voice is screaming, the truth is just another scream. Look at how regimes have learned to use information as a weapon. In some countries, dissent isn't crushed by silencing it, but by drowning it. Flooding the airwaves with so many conflicting stories, conspiracy theories, and half-truths that people stop trying to sort it out. The citizen doesn't rebel, they withdraw. They become passive. They go silent. And silence, in a world of infinite noise, becomes survival. But it's not just politics, it's your life, your choices, your sense of self. You want to make good decisions, but every decision is buried in reviews, ratings, testimonials, arguments, warnings, doubts. Paralysis by analysis. You research, you scroll, you compare, you worry, and in the end, you do nothing. Or you pick at random and hope for the best. When everything is information, nothing is meaning. Even your relationships suffer. The people around you become sources of content, stories to consume or ignore, moments to post and forget. You talk, but you don't listen. You hear, but you don't absorb. You retreat into curated bubbles where the information matches your beliefs, your mood, your comfort zone. Reality fractures. Truth is filtered, not found. And so, you withdraw. You scroll, but you don't engage. You read, but you don't respond. You hear, but you don't act. The flood becomes background noise and silence. The choice to ignore, to unplug, to look away, becomes your last refuge. It feels like weakness, but it's not. It's the final instinct of a mind under siege. But what happens to a society that goes silent? When people stop asking questions, stop challenging, stop connecting, stop caring, power fills the vacuum. Lies thrive in the silence left by fatigue. The world is shaped not by those who know the most, but by those who endure the noise and act anyway. You can't consume it all. You're not meant to. The answer is not to be more informed, but to be more intentional, to choose what you let in, what you focus on, what you question, to accept that you will miss things, that you will not know everything, that not every story deserves your energy, to resist the flood, not by building higher walls, but by learning to swim, to breathe, to let go, because the final trap of information fatigue is this. It teaches you to confuse awareness with wisdom, noise with knowledge, and silence with surrender. But silence, when chosen, can be clarity, a space to think, to reflect, to find meaning in the chaos. It can be an act of resistance, a refusal to let your mind be colonized by the endless flood. The world will not stop screaming. The headlines will not stop flashing. The data will not stop pouring in. But you, alone in the deluge, can choose to pause, to question, to feel, to act on what matters, and to let the rest wash by. In a world of infinite noise, your silence, your conscious, deliberate silence, can be the loudest truth of all. Generational trauma loops. You carry ghosts you've never met, the ache in your bones, the fear in your dreams, the reflex to flinch when someone raises their voice. It's not always yours. It's an echo, a signal, sent through blood and bone, passed down from people whose faces you may never have seen. The story of pain doesn't end with the person who first suffered. It loops, it grows, and eventually, it gets a name. Not trauma, but tradition. Not wound, but culture. What you call your way of life might just be the scar tissue left by someone else's wounds. This is the world of generational trauma loops, where the suffering of the past is never buried. Instead, it's wrapped, disguised, and handed to the next in line, until nobody can tell where the pain ends and the culture begins. Picture this. Your grandmother lives through war, bombs at midnight, food lines, betrayal, loss. She survives, but her body learns something she can never unlearn. Be alert. Don't trust. Hide your emotions. Keep your head down. She teaches these lessons not out of malice, but out of love, out of fear. She believes this is what it takes to survive. Her daughter, your mother, grows up not knowing why she jumps at loud noises, why she flinches when the world gets too quiet. She learns to worry. She learns to fear. You inherit the code too. Maybe it's not bombs now, but you find yourself apologizing for existing, shrinking when you should stand tall, biting your tongue in moments you should roar. You carry their terror as your inheritance, and you mistake it for your nature. But it's not just families, it's whole societies. A nation wounded by colonization, by famine, by slavery, by genocide. The scars go deep. Survival strategies, silence, suspicion, self-erasure, become virtues. We don't talk about that. Don't make trouble. Keep the peace. Trauma becomes etiquette, then culture, then law. And generations later, nobody remembers the source. But everyone still lives by its rules. Worse, these rules become sacred. Question them, and you're told you're betraying your ancestors, your community, your heritage. Defy the trauma, and you risk exile. Not from safety, but from belonging. And so, the wound becomes an identity badge. The pain that was meant to be healed instead becomes a flag you're taught to wave. It's everywhere. Children of the abused become strict, cold, strong, telling themselves that love must be earned. Nations that were starved teach their children to hoard, to distrust generosity, to see the world as a place of scarcity and threat. The child of the traumatized becomes the parent of the anxious. The loop continues, each generation polishing the scars until they shine like pride. It happens quietly, through bedtime stories, through warnings whispered in the dark, through jokes that aren't funny but are repeated anyway, through food, through language, through the rituals of mourning and celebration. What should have been a memory of pain becomes a manual for living. You're taught to fight for these scars, because not fighting means forgetting where you came from. You see it in families who never say, "I love you," in cultures where men never cry, in communities where anyone who tries to break the silence is shunned or ridiculed. We've always done it this way, they say, but always just means the wound has never healed. And it's so seductive. The trauma loop gives you a story, a place, a tribe. If your ancestors suffered, you carry their pain not just as memory, but as mission. We survived, you say. We must honor their struggle. But honoring pain is not the same as healing it. Sometimes, to truly honor the past, you have to refuse to carry its injuries forward. Science even gives it a name: epigenetics. Stress and fear can leave chemical marks on DNA, shaping how the next generation responds to the world. Trauma isn't just psychological, it's biological. Your body remembers what your mind can't. But the loop isn't just about inheritance, it's about packaging. Culture absorbs the wound and sells it back as pride, as destiny, as the reason you're different. You fight for the customs that were born out of survival, forgetting they were once desperate, makeshift solutions to extraordinary pain. Imagine a family recipe, created in famine, using scraps and substitutes. Decades later, the famine is gone, but the recipe remains, celebrated as heritage. Or think of rituals born from mourning, now performed without tears, as if to say, we're still standing. The origin is forgotten, but the pattern endures. So, what breaks the loop? First, the courage to name it, to see the difference between wisdom and wound, between tradition and trauma, to ask, are we living or just surviving on autopilot? Who profits if I keep hurting? Who loses if I heal? Breaking the loop is dangerous work. It means risking anger, rejection, even exile. It means looking at your heroes, parents, elders, ancestors, and admitting that some of what they gave you was poison, not medicine. It means loving them while refusing to carry their suffering any further. But this is how real culture is born, not from the scars, but from the healing. Not from endless repetition, but from evolution. From turning wounds into warnings, not worship. From teaching children that their inheritance can be more than pain. You are not doomed to repeat what was done to you. You can be the turning point, the one who chooses to feel, to speak, to heal, to forgive. You can rewrite the code. You can remember where you came from, without dragging the ghosts with you. So, next time you hear, "This is just who we are," ask, who decided? And do I want to carry that forward? You may find that your greatest act of love is to let the loop end with you, to turn inherited scars into living skin, and make your own story, a story not of wounds, but of freedom. Normalized surveillance syndrome. You used to have a place all your own, a mental room where you could think, feel, and simply be unobserved. But those days are gone. The eyes are everywhere now. In your pocket, on your street, in your workplace, watching as you scroll, pause, search, laugh, wince. At first, you noticed the cameras, the microphones, the trackers. They made you nervous. They made you look over your shoulder, question what you shared, what you whispered, what you did when you thought you were alone. But soon, something shifted. You adapted. You learned how to move beneath the unblinking gaze. You learned which words triggered suspicion, which jokes were safe, which opinions got you applause, or got you flagged. You performed. At first, it was a mask you put on for the audience. But as time passed, the mask grew lighter, thinner, more natural. One day you realized you no longer knew where the mask ended, and you began. This is the normalized surveillance syndrome. It isn't just about being watched. It's about learning to live as if you are always on display. Your phone tracks your location. Your laptop records your keystrokes. Your smart speaker listens for your voice, promising convenience while feeding invisible databases. Even your own social feeds become mirrors. every post, every like, every glance building a profile for the unseen observer. You have been mapped, graphed, quantified, your emotions, preferences, fears, harvested and sold. But the strangest part isn't the surveillance itself. It's the way you accept it. At first, you resisted. You wanted privacy. You complained. You protested. You read the headlines about leaks and hacks and breaches. But resistance is exhausting. And slowly, without ever choosing, you surrendered. Not all at once, but drip by drip. You accepted a trade, safety for scrutiny, convenience for invisibility, belonging for autonomy. The watchers made promises, and you believed them. It's for your safety. It's just metadata. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Eventually, you stopped caring who was watching. You started living for the gaze, shaping your life to look good from every angle. You crafted your captions, curated your smiles, rehearsed your outrage. Even in private, you performed. You performed for the friends who might see your messages, for the employer who might see your feed, for the government that might scan your posts. You performed for an algorithm that rewards you for behaving as expected. You performed for ghosts. And then, something even stranger happened. The idea of privacy, true privacy, became distant, almost alien. When was the last time you spoke without thinking of how it might be received, recorded, replayed? When was the last time you made a choice without weighing the invisible audience? The sense of self you once guarded has become blurred by 1,000 eyes. You don't just act under surveillance. You think, feel, and dream under it. Think about the subtle ways this changes you. Maybe you hold back a joke, knowing it will be logged. Maybe you edit your search terms, anticipating how they'll look to a stranger reading your history. Maybe you delete a message, not because you regret it, but because you worry it could be misunderstood. Your world shrinks to fit the watcher's lens. You learn to self-censor, not out of fear, but out of habit. Surveillance seeps into your bones, rewiring you from the inside out. The syndrome deepens with every new technology. Smart homes that monitor your routines, cars that log your travels, health trackers that share your heartbeat, your sleep, your moments of anxiety. You welcome these tools. They make life easier, healthier, safer. But with each new device, the walls close in a little more. You become your own warden, anticipating the camera's expectations, smoothing out your rough edges, smiling on cue. Authenticity fades, replaced by a performance so rehearsed that it becomes the only version of you that exists. And yet, you rarely notice the loss. The world around you is performing too. The office is full of coworkers crafting their image for the boss, the feed, the metrics. Friends edit their lives into highlight reels. Politicians stage their outrage for viral moments. Even the resistance is staged, optimized, broadcast. The difference between reality and appearance blurs until nobody remembers what it felt like to be unwatched. The true cost of normalized surveillance syndrome is not just your data, your history, your digital footprint. It is the erosion of the inner life, the slow, suffocating death of the secret self. When every thought is weighed, every feeling calculated, every moment recorded or discarded, you lose the ability to know yourself apart from your reflection. You forget what privacy ever felt like, not because it was taken from you, but because you surrendered it in tiny daily bargains until you didn't miss it at all. But there is still a choice. You can reclaim the hidden spaces, the unobserved moments, the parts of yourself that don't perform for any audience. It starts by noticing the mask, feeling its weight, remembering what it means to step off stage. It means fighting for privacy, not as a luxury, but as a human right, a sacred space where your mind and soul can breathe without judgment. It means daring to speak, think, and feel as if nobody is watching, even when you know deep down that someone always is. In a world that wants to watch you always, remember what it means to truly be alone with yourself. Hold on to it, defend it. Because the last sanctuary of freedom is not a place without cameras. It is a mind that remembers how to exist beyond the gaze. Rewritten memory campaigns. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling a chill you can't explain. Something in the air has shifted. You look at an old photo, maybe of a street, a monument, a moment with your family, and for a split second it feels wrong. The sign is different. The colors have changed, the faces are familiar, but the story behind them is not. You try to laugh it off as faulty memory, but there's a deeper current beneath. The creeping realization that history is no longer what it once was. This is the world of rewritten memory campaigns, where history is not only edited, but weaponized, first gently, then brutally, until the past itself becomes a minefield, and you can be punished for remembering the wrong version. At first, the edits are soft. A word changed here, a sentence there. Textbooks are updated. Old headlines vanish from search results. Statues disappear in the night, replaced by empty plinths and silent questions. It was always this way, they say. As news footage is trimmed and speeches are redubbed, the uncomfortable truths are sanded down, made palatable. The collective story shifts, so gently that most people barely notice. What's the harm, after all, in making history less painful, less complicated? Why not erase the parts that cause trouble, or the details that no longer fit the narrative of today? But the edits don't stop. They never do. Because once you discover the power to rewrite the past, you have the power to control the present and the future. Soon it isn't just awkward moments or controversial figures being erased. Entire events are reinterpreted, then erased, then denied. Yesterday's heroes become today's villains. Celebrations turn to condemnations. Entire generations are told they must forget, or else. One day you realize the story you grew up with is gone. The wars were fought for different reasons. The leaders you admired never existed, or if they did, it was only as cautionary tales. The songs you sang as a child have new verses, new meanings. You find yourself hesitating before telling a story from your past, unsure if the memory you hold is now forbidden. You see it in your friends too, the momentary stutter, the quick correction, the shared look of confusion. No, that's not how it happened, they say. Even though you both remember it the same way, you start to question your sanity. But it's not madness, it's memory warfare. Rewritten memory campaigns are not just the stuff of dystopian fiction. They have happened and are happening all over the world. In some places, old films are digitally altered, removing faces, changing dialogue, making entire people vanish from history. In others, entire libraries are purged, and new histories are printed in their place. What is left behind is a shell of truth, hollowed out and filled with a story that serves those in power. But it doesn't end there. The cruelty of this campaign is not just in the edit, but in the punishment. One day, you remember a different past out loud. You mention the statue that used to stand in the square, or the speech you heard as a child. The room goes quiet. Someone looks away. Another scolds you, gently at first. We don't say that anymore, but the warnings get sharper. That never happened. Don't spread lies. You are accused of clinging to forbidden memories, of sowing confusion, of betraying the new truth. Your nostalgia becomes a crime. You're punished for remembering what was real, forced to confess to the new history, to recite the approved version, to teach it to your children. You see this pattern everywhere, once you know how to look, in the shifting borders of maps, in the headlines that rewrite themselves, in the monuments that rise and fall at the whim of the moment. What you once loved, what you once mourned, is replaced by a script. And if you resist, if you hold on to the memory of how things used to be, you risk being labeled dangerous, an enemy of the state, a relic of a world that no longer exists. This is not nostalgia. This is erasure, and it is methodical. Every memory campaign begins with the claim that it's for the greater good, that it's about healing wounds, moving forward, uniting people. But unity built on amnesia is brittle. The more you erase, the more you must police the gaps, until a whole generation grows up without a shared foundation, living in a world where the past is whatever the powerful say it is. And the danger is not only for the old, but for the young. Because when you erase history, you erase warning. You erase the ability to recognize the same mistakes coming around again. You find yourself living in a state of permanent uncertainty. Did you misremember? Or did they rewrite? Are you the only one who remembers, or is everyone else just pretending? It's a silent war, a battle for your most personal, private truths. The damage is deep, existential. Because if your memories can be changed from the outside, then who are you? What is left of your identity, your story, your lineage? So you become careful. You edit yourself, in public and in private. You teach your children the safe version, and whisper the real one when no one else is listening. You save scraps, old photos, secret diaries, bits of forbidden truth, hidden in places you hope they'll never look. Your mind becomes a vault, protecting the past from those who would erase it. But every year, the pressure increases. The cost of remembering grows heavier. One day you realize you're alone with your memory. The world outside no longer matches the world inside your head. In the end, rewritten memory campaigns are not just about controlling history. They are about controlling the very concept of truth. They turn memory into a weapon, nostalgia into a liability, history into a mirage. They teach you that the most dangerous thing you can possess is a memory that doesn't match the script. And if you let go of that last stubborn truth, then you are truly free, free to be rewritten over and over, until there is nothing left but silence where a lifetime of stories used to live. But if you hold on, even when it hurts, you carry a fragment of resistance, a reminder that no campaign can ever truly erase what is held fiercely in the heart. So guard your memories, write them down, pass them on. Because in a world where the past can be changed at will, memory itself is rebellion. And the greatest punishment of all is to forget why you ever needed to remember. Enemy fabrication tactic. They don't need to control you with chains if they can control you with shadows. The most reliable way to command loyalty isn't with love, but with fear. And the oldest, most effective fear is the fear of an enemy so perfectly constructed, so endlessly menacing, that your dread turns to devotion and your doubts dissolve into silence. This is the enemy fabrication tactic, and it is as old as power itself. It begins with a whisper, not a war. Someone somewhere tells you there is danger, an outsider, a traitor, a monster in the mist. Maybe you never see them, but you hear the warnings. You see the stories, the news that never sleeps, the rumors that travel faster than facts. Every story is a brick, every rumor a nail, building a villain so convincing you feel them breathing down your neck. Suddenly, every crisis has a culprit. Every loss has a face. The reason your job is gone, the reason you can't sleep at night, the reason things feel out of control. All of it points to them. And who are they? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you believe they exist, and that you believe only your leaders, your tribe, your system can protect you. This tactic is everywhere, woven into the fabric of politics, media, corporations, even the stories we tell children. The process is always the same. First, identify an other, someone who doesn't look like you, sound like you, live like you. Next, blame them for everything you fear, the crime, the chaos, the decline. Then, ramp up the threat. Make the danger seem urgent, existential. If you don't act now, if you don't trust us, everything you love will be destroyed. The enemy is coming, the enemy is here. Your fear is not irrational. Fear is the engine of survival. But in the hands of those who want power, your fear becomes their tool. The more you worry, the more you crave protection. And every offer of protection comes with a price. Your loyalty, your obedience, your unquestioning belief. Consider how nations have always needed enemies. During times of peace, leaders struggle to unite people. But when an enemy is manufactured, foreign or domestic, real or invented, suddenly the fractured public becomes a single body. People accept sacrifices, restrictions, even violence in the name of survival. War becomes peace. Dissent becomes treason. The line between patriot and enemy blurs until only fear remains. History is crowded with examples. The Red Scare in America, where neighbors spied on neighbors, where a whisper could cost you your freedom, your job, your life. The War on Terror, where new enemies appeared whenever fear threatened to fade, where entire populations were judged guilty by association, where the promise of safety justified every loss of liberty. Even now, the enemy might be a race, a religion, a political party, a faceless hacker, a shadowy cabal. The faces change. The tactic never does. Corporations do it too. They warn you of threats, germs, hackers, the other brand. Your loyalty is bought by fear. Buy our product, trust our system, or the enemy will win. Even your most innocent habits are targeted. Every security alert, every health scare, every manufactured panic is another brick in the wall. You pay for protection from a threat that may not even exist. And the more you fear, the less you question the cost. It happens in relationships as well. Some people keep you loyal by warning you about others. Don't trust them. Only I can keep you safe. They build the world as a battlefield, with you on their side, and everyone else a potential enemy. Your loyalty is measured by your willingness to believe the threat, and your silence is proof of your devotion. Here's the most insidious part. The more you fear, the less you question. Every time you try to doubt, every time you ask, is the enemy real? Are they really that dangerous? The tactic kicks in again. Why are you asking questions? Whose side are you on? Doubt becomes treason. Curiosity becomes disloyalty. The walls close in. You stop thinking and start obeying. Fear makes the world small, and in that smallness, power thrives. When the enemy is everywhere, you turn inward. You silence yourself. You police your neighbors. You demand conformity. The ones in control never need to justify themselves. The existence of the enemy is justification enough. Every liberty lost, every cruelty inflicted, every truth denied is excused by the shadow of the threat. The result is a society, a workplace, a family, or a mind that lives in constant tension. Safety becomes the highest good. Anyone who questions the narrative becomes suspect. The very people who could protect you from manipulation, those who dare to doubt, are cast out as traitors. And when the enemy fades, when the threat turns out to be less than promised, another is invented. The tactic requires constant maintenance. The moment you stop being afraid, you might start thinking. And that is the one thing those in power cannot allow. Ask yourself, who benefits when you are afraid? Who profits when you surrender your freedom in exchange for protection? Who asks for loyalty, not because they have earned it, but because they have manufactured the threat that keeps you loyal? You were not born to live in terror. Fear is not your natural state. The world is full of real dangers, but the most dangerous are the ones built in the shadows, designed not to protect you, but to own you. Breaking the enemy fabrication tactic takes courage, more courage than most people realize. It means being willing to face the world without a villain, without someone to blame. It means questioning the stories you're told, even when it costs you acceptance, even when it makes you an outsider. It means refusing to let your fear become your leash, your silence, your identity. Real loyalty isn't built on fear. It's built on trust, earned over time by truth and action. And real questions are never treason. They are the beginning of freedom. So when you hear the whispers, see the headlines, feel the pressure to be afraid, pause. Ask yourself, is this enemy real or manufactured? Is this fear mine or planted? The first moment you ask, the walls begin to crumble. And in that crumbling, you begin to see not just the shadows, but the light beyond them. The power to choose for yourself. The courage to belong to something greater than fear. And the freedom to say, I will not be loyal to a lie. Patriotism, weaponization technique. You were taught to love your country before you ever understood what a country really is. The anthem played and your chest swelled. The flag waved and you stood up straight. The textbooks told you that loyalty was noble, that loving your homeland was the purest form of belonging. But somewhere along the way, that love was rewritten. Not for the people, not for the land, not for the ideals, but for the rulers, for the faces on the screen, the voices in the parliament, the slogans printed on posters. The flag, once a symbol of unity and shared struggle, becomes the shield of the powerful, the badge of obedience. This is the patriotism weaponization technique, a manipulation so old, so effective, that most never see it until it's too late. It works like this. The love you feel for your homeland, your memories, your language, your culture, your hopes, is slowly redirected. It's tethered, bit by bit, to the leaders, the parties, the institutions in power. Love for the country becomes indistinguishable from loyalty to those who claim to represent it. To question the rulers is to question the country itself. To criticize, to dissent, to protest, even out of love, even to make it better, becomes heresy, betrayal, treason. The flag, the anthem, the slogans are weaponized. Suddenly, to wave the flag is to endorse the regime. To kneel during the anthem is to invite condemnation, exile, hate. The language of patriotism is twisted into a tool of control. It's not just a theory, it's history, repeated again and again. In authoritarian states, the ruler becomes the embodiment of the nation. The dictator's portrait hangs beside the national emblem. Their words are recited like scripture, their critics denounced as traitors, enemies, outsiders. But it's not limited to dictatorships. Even in democracies, politicians wrap themselves in the flag, accuse their opponents of hating the country, turn every criticism into an existential threat. When elections are near, suddenly everyone's a patriot, except those who dare to ask the wrong questions. Remember the lesson of the flag? A piece of cloth, woven with history and hope, can be turned into a mask. The more you're told to salute it, the less you're allowed to question what's done in its name. You're told that to love your country means to accept everything the rulers say, to parrot the slogans, to ignore the abuses, to close your eyes when rights are trampled. The symbols are everywhere, more visible than the actual people they supposedly represent. You see parades, marches, chants, massive banners, unity, they say, but what they really mean is conformity. It's in the slogans. Real patriots stand with us. If you're not with us, you're against us. Enemies of the nation. These phrases do not invite debate. They demand obedience. The more complicated the reality, the simpler the slogan becomes. Flags are waved while policies are written in the dark. People are made to fear dissent, to whisper their doubts, to hide their questions. The rulers claim to be the nation. Anyone who challenges them is painted as an enemy of the country, of the people, of the very idea of belonging. You see it everywhere. In times of crisis, leaders rally the people around national unity, demanding sacrifice, silence, loyalty. During war, anyone who doubts is a traitor. During protest, anyone who speaks is a subversive. If you march with the flag, you are safe. If you question the flag, you are targeted. Slogans are repeated until they lose all meaning. Freedom, security, tradition, family. But behind the words are decisions you cannot see, powers you cannot challenge, abuses you cannot name without risking your place in the story. The weaponization of patriotism turns neighbor against neighbor. It breeds suspicion. Who is loyal enough? Who is secretly a threat? Whose love of country is real and whose is not? It turns the country itself into a test, a loyalty contest where the only winners are those at the top and everyone else is suspect. The pain is deep. Ordinary people who love their home, who want it to be better, are silenced. Activists are jailed, journalists threatened, artists censored. Families are torn apart by suspicion and fear. The anthem plays on, louder and louder, to drown out the sound of dissent. Think about how easily symbols become shields. A ribbon, a pin, a wristband. All meant to show solidarity. All slowly transformed into signals of conformity. Wear the colors, stand for the anthem, repeat the pledge. You begin to wonder, is this love or is this fear? Is this unity or is it submission? The answer is buried under layers of performance. The rulers don't want you to love your country. They want you to love them. They want you to forget that rulers come and go, but the country remains. That the flag is not their property, but yours. That true patriotism means holding your leaders accountable, defending the principles that make a nation worth loving in the first place. History's greatest tragedies are born from this manipulation. When the crowd is convinced that dissent is treason, atrocities become possible. The most brutal acts are committed in the name of the nation. The loudest applause is reserved for those who shout the hardest, who wave the flag the highest, who silence the questioners most ruthlessly. Afterward, the slogans fade, but the wounds remain. The real patriots, the ones who spoke up, who questioned, who tried to protect what was best in their country, are left forgotten or vilified, until the next crisis, when the script is flipped and yesterday's traitors become today's heroes. So ask yourself, what do you really love? The land, the language, the people, the history, or the rulers, the slogans, the pageantry? When you see the flag, do you see a symbol of freedom or a tool of power? When you hear the anthem, do you feel hope or pressure? The rulers want your heart, but they don't want your mind. They want your loyalty, but not your courage. They want your voice, but only if it repeats their words. Refuse to be manipulated. Patriotism is not obedience. Patriotism is love in action, demanding better, speaking truth, holding leaders accountable, protecting the vulnerable, defending real freedom, not just symbols. Don't let them weaponize your love. Don't let them convince you that silence is loyalty, that questioning is betrayal, that flags are freedom and slogans are facts. The country is bigger than any ruler, deeper than any slogan, stronger than any flag. Remember that. Remember it when they tell you otherwise. Remember it when they try to make you forget. Hope injection strategy. They know exactly how much hope you need. Just a spark, never a wildfire. Just enough change to make you believe in tomorrow, to keep your eyes forward, your anger at bay. They don't want you desperate. They don't want you hopeless. Hopeless people riot. Hopeless people burn down the walls. But hope is a tranquilizer. Hope keeps you waiting, working, praying for a future that always seems just one compromise away. This is the hope injection strategy, a subtle, relentless campaign to keep you moving forward, but never truly arriving. Look around. Every time the pressure builds, every time protest rises, every time people threaten to break the system, they inject just enough hope. A new law passed, a figurehead resigns, a promise made for the cameras. We hear you. Change is coming. The crowd breathes out. The storm recedes, the system remains. Think of history's cycles. The oppressed demand justice, so a reform is granted. A right restored, a wage raised, a voice heard. Enough to celebrate, enough to believe. But never enough to dismantle the system that created the suffering in the first place. It's progress, yes, but it's managed progress. Measured, controlled. The minimum required for you to stay in the game. It happens everywhere. In politics, the party in power always promises a new dawn, a break from the old. The opposition rallies the desperate, promising a revolution. But when the banners come down, when the ink dries, the structure stays the same. The faces change, but the machine keeps turning. You feel heard, but you're still trapped in the same old maze. In the workplace, it's the promise of promotion, the hint of recognition, the dangling carrot of maybe next year. Employees are given just enough to keep hoping, just enough to silence the urge to revolt. The company town never really leaves. You're just chasing a fancier carrot. Social justice, too, is managed with hope. Movements catch fire, then the headlines say, "We're making progress." The most visible injustices are sanded down, but the deep structures, the roots, are left untouched. You get a victory. You celebrate. The cage grows more comfortable, but the locks remain. And that's the genius of the hope injection strategy. It's not about erasing your pain. It's about managing it. The system doesn't want you silent. It wants you just loud enough to make reform seem possible, but never so loud you threaten the foundation. Just angry enough to protest, just patient enough to wait. Always believing that next time, next year, next vote, next leader will finally be different. Why do you fall for it? Because hope is intoxicating. Because despair is unbearable. The human mind is wired for the future. Give it a dream and it will keep walking, even if the ground never changes. Give it a hint of change and it will forgive the chains. It's not weakness, it's survival. But over time, you start to notice the pattern. The same speeches, the same reforms, the same cycle of crisis and calm. You start to wonder, am I moving forward or just running in circles? Is this change or is it just new paint on old bars? The hope injection strategy isn't just political, it's psychological. It shapes your sense of possibility. It turns you into your own warden, guarding your dreams, policing your own rebellion. You tell yourself to wait, to be patient. We've come so far already, you say. Change is slow, but whose timeline are you following? Who profits when you keep waiting? The trick is always timing. Too little hope, and the system risks collapse. Too much, and people realize the cage is open. So, hope is rationed, doled out in crisis, withheld in calm. Movements are allowed to breathe, but never to run. You are permitted to dream, but only as long as your dream fits inside their blueprint. They want you to chase reform, not revolution. To believe that the problem is a few bad apples, not the orchard itself. To fight for a slightly bigger cell, a window with a better view, but never to ask, who built the prison? Or, what would life be like outside these walls? And here's the paradox. Hope is not the enemy. Real hope, radical hope, is dangerous. It's what builds new worlds, tears down empires, reimagines the possible. But managed hope, manufactured, injected, measured by the teaspoon, becomes a leash. So, what do? Refuse false hope. Refuse the sugar rush of easy reform. Demand the kind of change that isn't given, but taken. The kind that breaks foundations, not just repaints the gates. Look for the places where hope is used as anesthesia, not as fuel. Ask yourself, what would you fight for if you knew no help was coming? What would you build if you stopped waiting for permission? What if you saw the cage for what it is? Not a home, but a trap disguised as progress. The hope injection strategy is everywhere, but it is not invincible. The moment you demand more than comfort, more than incremental change, when you insist on real transformation, not just relief, that's when hope becomes rebellion. That's when the game changes. Don't just chase the dream they gave you. Dream bigger. Dream beyond. Dream so wide that no cage can hold you, no reform can contain you, no system can ration your hope. Because in the end, the only real escape is the one you make for yourself. And the only real hope is the kind you refuse to let them take away. Cultural infiltration device. You turn on your favorite song, feeling that old surge of energy, the thrill of rebellion, the urge to question, to push back. You see it in movies, hear it in viral slogans, read it in best-selling novels. Messages of revolution, of freedom, of tearing down the old to build something new. It feels radical, authentic, dangerous. But look again. In the corners, behind the glitter and noise, a subtle pattern emerges. The rebellion you admire was approved before it ever reached your ears. This is the cultural infiltration device, an apparatus more powerful than any single law or leader, because it operates in the shadows, quietly steering what you think is yours. Media, art, music, these are the channels through which the world moves your heart, your hopes, your sense of what is possible. But now, these streams flow through hands that decide which voices rise and which ideas vanish. The boundaries of your imagination are managed, manicured, policed. Start with music. You remember the anthems of protest, the soundtracks of resistance. But ask yourself, how did these songs reach you? Who paid for their production, their promotion, their viral ascent? The tracks that break through, that light up the charts, that become the backdrop to your longing for change, often bear the fingerprints of industry executives, PR experts, and sometimes, silent partners with interests far above the stage. True dissent rarely gets a label, let alone a marketing budget. The edges are sanded down, the rage is softened into nostalgia, the call for real change becomes a fashion statement. You're allowed to feel rebellious, but only inside the cage they built for you. Look at film and TV. Stories of revolution, resistance, questioning authority. They come with dazzling effects, charismatic heroes, dramatic scores. But step back. Which rebellions are shown as noble? Which as criminal? Which is doomed? Scripts are greenlit not because they threaten the status quo, but because they reinforce it in subtle, satisfying ways. The hero's journey always leads back to the same safe ground. Even the most subversive blockbusters end with the old order restored, or the rebel absorbed into the system. You are sold catharsis, not revolution. A chance to feel like a rebel without ever disrupting the world outside your screen. Art, too, is curated. Museums, galleries, biennales, each a fortress of taste, run by boards and donors, by state or corporate interests. The artists whose work pushes boundaries are celebrated, but notice which boundaries never move, which wars are never condemned, which histories never told, which visions never shown. The truly dangerous art, the art that threatens the narrative, not just the decor, is often locked away, forgotten, smeared, or censored outright. What survives is the image of dissent, emptied of risk and repackaged as edgy decor for the powerful. The device is clever. It knows that outright censorship draws attention, breeds curiosity, so instead, it floods the world with the appearance of debate, the illusion of controversy, the theater of transgression. Dissent is commodified. Rebellion becomes a brand, outrage a meme, wokeness a marketing campaign. You are encouraged to speak truth to power, as long as the truth is palatable, as long as the power is listening, and always as long as the sponsors approve. The boundaries of your anger, your hope, your resistance are all mapped and managed in advance. The effect runs deep. You begin to see the world through the eyes they provide. Your sense of what is possible, what is dangerous, what is cool, all shaped by hands you'll never meet. You join the protest, post the hashtag, wear the shirt. But your rebellion has already been measured, calculated, approved. The wildness you crave is contained. You are allowed to push the edges, but only to the borders that serve the system. Consider this. The most effective way to control a culture is not to crush its spirit, but to channel it, to make rebellion safe, to let the people vent, shout, dance, create, so long as none of it reaches the roots of real power. You feel the rush of revolt, but the structure remains untouched, unshaken. The anger that could build a new world is harnessed, redirected, monetized, then sold back to you as entertainment. The cultural infiltration device doesn't just hide in boardrooms or studios. It hides in your own longing for meaning. It exploits the very instincts that drive you to seek change, to push for more. And over time, you begin to doubt your own authenticity. Is this feeling real? Is my rebellion mine? Or was it planted? You question, you spiral, you retreat into irony or detachment. This is the final layer of control, not just steering your actions, but eroding your faith in your own desires. But if you notice the device, if you dare to look beneath the surface, you start to see the cracks. Real rebellion is not safe, not marketable, not comfortable. It isn't built to fit inside a playlist or a meme or a box office weekend. It happens at the margins, in the shadows, in places no sponsor will ever visit. It's slow, lonely, dangerous, and real. It can't be sold, and it can't be stolen. The next time you feel the thrill of rebellion in a song, a film, a post, ask yourself who approved it, who benefits, who is missing. Listen for the voices that don't make it onto the playlist, the stories that never get told, the ideas that disappear before they can take root. Realize that the culture you consume is not just a reflection of your soul, but a blueprint for your boundaries. And remember, the only rebellion that matters is the one that can't be bought, boxed, or broadcast. The one that breaks the device, not just polishes its mirror. Scientific authority. Hijack. You hear it every day, on the news, in government briefings, in the classroom, scrolling through your phone. Trust the science. It's a mantra, a shield, an unspoken commandment. But what happens when science itself is hijacked? When the prestige, authority, and respect built over centuries is used not to reveal truth, but to distort it. This is the dark art of scientific authority. Hijack. A world where data is bent, inquiry is policed, and the language of discovery becomes the language of control. Imagine the white lab coat, the microscope, the solemn voice at a podium. Science is supposed to be the ultimate searchlight, cutting through lies, challenging power, exposing error. We want to believe that scientists are immune to bias, immune to politics, immune to manipulation. But the truth is, science is a human endeavor, and humans can be corrupted. When power learns to wear the mask of reason, the most dangerous lies are spoken in the accent of fact. It starts with small distortions, subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye. A graph with an altered axis, a study with a missing data set, a paper funded by interests who need a certain conclusion. The data is not faked outright, just massaged, reframed, given a new emphasis. The headlines scream, "Science proves," but the proof is a sleight of hand. A shifting shadow behind the glass of authority. You've seen it in history. Tobacco companies in the 20th century funding research to prove that smoking was safe. Scientists with impeccable credentials standing before Congress, waving charts, muddying the waters with doubt and jargon. The science isn't settled, they say, until it is when the damage is done, and those who warned the truth are dismissed as radicals. Or consider the opioid crisis. Pharmaceutical giants paid for research, sponsored continuing education, controlled messaging in medical schools. Scientific authority became a battering ram, smashing through skepticism and paving the way for addiction, ruin, and death. All justified by studies, journals, and the glowing language of clinical progress. In the digital age, the scientific authority hijack grows more dangerous. Information moves too fast for most people to check sources, to read methods, to understand the difference between correlation and causation. A single peer-reviewed article can reshape policy for millions, even if its flaws are obvious to anyone with time to look. But who has that time? Not you, not the public. Only those with an agenda and a platform, and the patience to grind dissent into dust. Watch as inquiry is rebranded as heresy. Real scientists agree, they say, while dissenters are labeled as dangerous, anti-scientific, unhinged. It doesn't matter if those voices raise real questions, if they have evidence, if their only crime is curiosity. The message is clear. Challenge the consensus, and you risk your career, your reputation, your place at the table. Inquiry is no longer a virtue, but a threat. The tactic is ancient, dressed up in modern robes. The powerful use science as armor, while redefining what counts as science behind closed doors. Grants flow to the obedient. Conferences welcome the like-minded. Data that fits the narrative is amplified. Data that doesn't is flawed, outdated, misleading. You watch as journals retract inconvenient studies, not because they're proven wrong, but because they're politically dangerous. In this world, the very tools of science, uncertainty, revision, debate, are turned into weapons against truth. If a theory shifts, they call it settled. If a model fails, they bury the error. They demand absolute trust in provisional answers and attack anyone who remembers that doubt is the engine of discovery. The hijack is complete when the public loses the ability to distinguish between authority and inquiry, between the image of truth and the reality of it. Examples surround you. During pandemics, conflicting models are treated as gospel, until they aren't. Masks are useless, then vital, then optional, then mandatory. Each reversal is presented as science, never as politics, never as uncertainty, never as a process unfolding in real time. If you question, you are a danger. If you hesitate, you are irresponsible. If you ask to see the raw data, you are accused of undermining trust itself. Behind it all is the old game, the use of scientific prestige to justify power. Regulation, surveillance, censorship, all done in the name of science. But the true spirit of science is not obedience, it is rebellion. It is the willingness to be wrong, to test every claim, to argue even with the consensus. When science becomes an edict, enforced from above, it stops being science at all. It becomes dogma, enforced not with evidence, but with fear. Look to the whistleblowers, the researchers who lost funding, the professors silenced by social outrage or administrative decree. Their crime was not ignorance, but inquiry. Their punishment is exile from the temple of authority. And still the public is told, this is for your own good. Trust us. Trust the data. But the data is behind a wall, the methods locked in a vault, the discussion edited for your safety, the scientific authority. Hijack thrives on your trust, your awe, your instinct to believe in reason. But reason is not a credential, it is a process. Science is not a monolith, but a battle, a never-ending war between evidence and assumption, between comfort and reality. To defend true science is to question even its highest priests, to demand transparency. To listen to dissent, to recognize that consensus is not always correctness. So, the next time you hear science says, stop. Ask, which science, whose data? What was left unsaid, unpublished, unexamined? The world is complicated. Truth does not always wear a white coat or speak in the voice of authority. Sometimes it whispers from the margins, begging for one more look, one more question, one more chance to break free from the grip of power masquerading as reason. If you surrender inquiry to those who wield science as a cudgel, you will inherit a world of certainty without understanding, obedience without wisdom, and progress without truth. But if you protect the wild, unruly heart of scientific curiosity, if you defend the right to doubt, to challenge, to dissent, you keep alive the only force strong enough to resist the hijack. Because real science is not afraid of questions. Only power is. And the day you forget that is the day the hijack is complete and the world loses the one thing that could have set it free. Militarized identity, framing. From the first moment you put on the uniform, you're changed. It doesn't matter if it's military camouflage, a police badge, a doctor's coat, or even a corporate suit. The fabric, the cut, the colors, they do something to you. You feel yourself slipping into a role, into a story, into a purpose that was crafted long before you ever showed up. You look in the mirror and see something different. Something bigger, maybe, more important, or maybe smaller, more invisible, less real. You feel pride, yes, but underneath something colder, the knowledge that who you are is now defined by someone else. This is militarized identity framing, a system so powerful it can rewrite your sense of self, your loyalty, your very soul. The world tells you that your job, your rank, your uniform is who you are, not what you believe, Not what you love, not what you dream, but what you represent for someone else's cause. You fight not for yourself, but for the story that's been handed to you, sometimes glorious, sometimes tragic, always predetermined by hands you'll never see. It starts subtly. When you join, you are initiated into ritual, the haircut, the handshake, the oath, the ceremony. They tell you who you are now. You are no longer an individual. You are a soldier, an officer, a brother, a sister in arms. The words feel heavy, almost sacred. Unit, squad, division, family. You repeat them so often they begin to erase everything that came before. Soon, you speak a new language. You refer to yourself by number, by position, by insignia. You become a private, a sergeant, a lieutenant. Your old name, your private doubts, your quiet thoughts. These things are pushed aside, filed away. You become the mask. The mask becomes you. You're told who to trust, who to hate, who is us and who is them. You are drilled day after day to move together, to think together, to fight together. The line between I and we blurs, then disappears. You learn that questioning is weakness, that loyalty is strength, that doubt is danger. But the doubts don't disappear. They just go silent, buried under layers of order and repetition. Your victories are not your own. Your failures are collective. You are celebrated when you follow, mourned when you fall, punished when you refuse. You find meaning in the story, so much meaning that you forget to ask where it came from. And always above you are the storytellers, the commanders, the architects, the ones who write the orders and rewrite the history. The system is built on narratives: protect and serve, defend the nation, fight for freedom. These slogans are repeated until they become a drumbeat in your chest, a rhythm that replaces thought with certainty. But for whose freedom? Whose nation? What are you really protecting? The questions grow dangerous the longer you serve, so you learn not to ask. Or if you do, you whisper late at night, when the uniform is off and the mask slips, and you remember for a moment what it felt like to be just you. History is full of uniforms. Every empire, every regime, every revolution dresses its people for the part. The uniform is armor, yes, but it is also erasure. It's a promise. You belong. And a threat. You will obey. When the uniform comes off, you feel naked, exposed, stripped of rank, stripped of story, stripped of certainty. Who are you without the stripes, the medals, the authority? You're not supposed to know. You're not supposed to ask. This is why militarized identity is so seductive. It offers clarity in a world of confusion. It replaces loneliness with belonging, chaos with order, doubt with mission. But it comes at a cost. The cost is your selfhood, the wild, complicated, unrepeatable you that existed before the uniform, that might never fully return. Think of how wars are fought, not just with weapons, but with stories. Soldiers are taught to see the enemy not as humans, but as threats, as obstacles, as monsters. The uniform gives permission to fight, to kill, to die. At home, the uniform commands respect, sometimes fear, sometimes hatred. People see the role, not the person. They salute, or they look away. They cheer, or they protest. Either way, you become a symbol, someone else's idea of what you mean. When you leave the system, the confusion can be overwhelming. The world no longer makes sense. The old stories don't fit. The old loyalties feel misplaced. You search for new meaning, but it's hard to find. Some never do. Some spend their whole lives trying to get back into the frame, to wear the uniform one more time, to feel the safety and certainty of belonging to something larger. But the truth is, you were always more than the mask. You were always bigger than the story. The uniform is a tool, not a destiny. The rank is a label, not a soul. The mission was never really yours. It was borrowed, worn, lived, and then one day set aside. The hardest work is learning how to exist without it, how to write your own story, how to reclaim the you that was always hidden underneath. The world will keep offering you new uniforms, new roles, new scripts. The temptation to step inside will always be there. But remember, you are not your uniform. You are not your rank. You are not the story someone else wrote. The real you is the one who can choose, to serve, to question, to walk away, to start again. Militarized identity framing is powerful, but it is not absolute. The first act of resistance is to see it for what it is, a story. The second act is to write your own. Attention redirection spell. You wake up and reach for your phone. Even before your mind is fully awake, the spectacle begins. Scandal, drama, outrage, one headline after another, each more urgent, more emotional, more impossible to ignore than the last. Your blood starts to race, your mind lights up, your thumb scrolls and scrolls, never satisfied, always searching for the next flash of adrenaline. You think you're just catching up on the world, but you don't realize you're already under a spell. The attention redirection spell. This spell is ancient, perfected long before the age of screens. It's a magician's trick. A sleight of hand for the soul. Distract the eye, seize the mind, and while you're captivated by the chaos, you'll never see the hand behind the curtain. In the modern world, the system holding the camera isn't hidden in shadows. It's in plain sight. But the drama is so overwhelming that nobody ever looks at the lens. The real power isn't in the story, but in who gets to decide which story is told. The architects of this spell know exactly how your mind works. They know you're drawn to conflict, to novelty, to anything that makes your heart pound or your anger rise. Outrage is addictive. Scandal is sticky. The more intense the spectacle, the less you notice what's missing. The less you question why certain stories never make it to your screen at all. And so, every day, you're flooded with manufactured emergencies. Someone said something offensive. Someone else made a mistake. A celebrity fell. A politician slipped. A company blundered. It never ends. It never pauses. Because if it paused, even for a moment, you might look up and start asking the real questions. But you don't. Because the spectacle is relentless. Every screen you own glows with the same addictive cycle. The social feed, the news, the group chat, even the conversations you overhear. They're all humming the same tune. Did you hear what happened? Can you believe what she said? Did you see that video? Outrage, then amusement, then fear, then relief. Over and over until you're exhausted. Until you forget you ever wanted anything else. Meanwhile, behind the curtain, the system holds steady. The real decisions, the real levers of power, are moved quietly. Policy is written. Rights are negotiated away. Wealth is transferred, sometimes overnight, from the many to the few. Wars are started, freedoms are narrowed, deals are struck. But your attention is elsewhere, locked on the latest spectacle, the newest distraction, the endless parade of shocks. You don't notice the system because you're not supposed to. That's the point of the spell. Think about the scandals that vanish as quickly as they explode. One day, it's the story everyone can't stop talking about. The next, it's gone, erased by a fresh outrage. The people in charge count on this. They know you won't remember because they never give you time to. They want you angry, but not focused. Outraged, but not organized. Drowning in detail, but blind to the shape of the machine. If you ever stop to look past the spectacle, to follow the money, the power, the patterns, you'd see the same hands on the controls. But you don't. You're not meant to. It's not just the news, it's everywhere. Marketing, entertainment, even your own relationships. Distraction is built into the fabric of your day. You're always busy, always engaged, always surrounded by noise. The more attention you give, the less you remember. The more you consume, the less you question. The spell deepens every time you take the bait. It's not just about ignorance, it's about control. A mind in chaos cannot organize. A mind obsessed with scandal cannot see injustice. A mind hooked on outrage will never build solidarity. The system thrives on your distraction, because distraction means you're no threat. You become a spectator in your own life, a passive consumer of reality instead of its author. The spell is reinforced by your own biology. Your brain rewards you for drama, for newness, for gossip, for the delicious rush of shared outrage. You get hits of dopamine every time you refresh the feed, every time you weigh in on the debate, every time you join the chorus of condemnation or praise. But none of it lasts. None of it builds. It just feeds the cycle, and the system smiles, safe in the knowledge that you're looking exactly where they want you to. Every magician needs a crowd, and every crowd needs a distraction. When the lights are brightest, the trick is already happening. Look there, not here. Watch the scandal, not the system. Feel the outrage, not the emptiness. That's how the spell is cast and recast and recast. Every day, every hour, every second you spend inside the spectacle. But the spell can be broken. It starts with noticing what you're being shown and asking what you're not. Who decides what is news and what isn't? Who chooses the angle, the headline, the outrage of the week? Who benefits when you're distracted, divided, exhausted, afraid? When you start to ask these questions, the fog begins to lift. The spell begins to crack. You start to see the camera, not just the show. You realize the stories were never about you. They were about keeping you watching and not acting. This is the secret they don't want you to learn. Your attention is your power. Where you look, what you notice, what you care about, these shape the world. The system can only control you if you let it decide what you see. If you take back your gaze, if you refuse the bait, if you turn from the spectacle and face the machinery behind it, you become dangerous. You become awake. So the next time the spell begins, when your heart races at the latest scandal, when your anger spikes, when your thumb scrolls faster and faster, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? Who is holding the camera? Who profits from my outrage? The world will never run out of spectacle, but you can choose to see through it. You can choose to look beyond, because the spell only works as long as you stay distracted. The moment you turn your attention to the source, to the system, to the silent hands behind the curtain, you break the illusion, and in that moment, you're free. Educational obedience design. You remember your first classroom, the rows of desks, the rules posted on the wall, the silence that fell whenever the teacher entered. You thought you were there to learn, to grow, to become yourself. But if you look closer, you'll see the truth. The system was never designed to help you think. It was built to make you obey. This is educational obedience design, the architecture of schools, lessons, and exams that rewards compliance over creativity, memorization over curiosity, silence over challenge. It's the invisible hand that shapes your mind long before you're old enough to realize you have one. Let's start with the basics. From the moment you enter school, you're taught to line up, sit still, raise your hand, ask for permission. You memorize the pledge, recite the answers, fill in the bubbles. Questions are welcome, so long as they are the right ones. Why is the sky blue is fine. Why are we learning this is dangerous. The system tolerates inquiry, but not dissent. And so, you learn the most important lesson of all. Don't question authority. Don't challenge the curriculum. Don't rock the boat. Your worth is measured not by what you create, but by how well you can repeat. The best students are the quiet ones, the neat ones, the ones who fill out worksheets and color inside the lines. Creativity is tolerated only if it fits the rubric. Originality is prized only if it pleases the judge. Over time, the message is clear. The world is built by those who follow instructions. Your report card is your mirror. Did you memorize the facts? Did you obey the rules? Did you absorb what we told you without asking who decided it was true? It's not an accident. Educational systems are products of their era. In the Industrial Revolution, schools were designed to make good factory workers, people who could read instructions, work the machines, obey the bell. In the information age, schools claim to prepare you for a world of innovation, but still test you on how well you can conform. The content changes, but the skeleton remains. This design is reinforced everywhere. The student who asks, "Why do we need to know this?" is labeled a troublemaker. The one who copies the formula, aces the test, moves up the ladder. The child who colors outside the lines is gently steered back to the template. The rebel is shamed, the outlier isolated. It happens in subtle ways. Think about group projects where one voice dominates and the rest follow. Think about standardized tests that punish unconventional answers. Think about the fear that comes from getting a wrong answer, when in the real world, the most valuable discoveries come from being wrong and trying again. Even the subjects you're offered are a map of control. History is taught as a string of dates and names, stripped of controversy. Literature is dissected for themes and metaphors, not for questions of justice or truth. Science is a list of facts, not a process of wonder and challenge. The message? Knowledge is something handed down, not something created. Your job is to absorb, not to transform. Why does it work? Because conformity is efficient. It makes classrooms quiet, predictable, easy to manage. It turns learning into a game with clear winners and losers. It makes authority invisible, just a voice at the front of the room, an answer key, a standardized curriculum. But the cost is enormous. Children who are born bursting with curiosity learn to doubt themselves. Artists are pruned into test takers. Problem solvers become box checkers. And the world is deprived of the minds that might have remade it. It goes deeper than school. This design shapes citizens, not just students. The child who never questions the teacher becomes the adult who never questions the law. The student who learns to repeat what is safe becomes the employee who fears to innovate. The voter who swallows headlines. The citizen who follows orders, even when orders lead to disaster. You see the result everywhere, in workplaces where new ideas are crushed by how we've always done it. In governments where the boldest voices are silenced, not celebrated. In cultures where tradition is worshipped, not examined. But it doesn't have to be this way. Some of the most revolutionary minds in history were troublemakers in school. Einstein, expelled for challenging his teachers. Mandela, jailed for defying authority. Malala, shot for insisting girls should learn. The world changes not because of obedience, but because someone dares to ask, why not? So how do you escape educational obedience design? First, you see it, you name it. You refuse to mistake memorization for mastery, obedience for intelligence. You teach yourself to ask better questions, not just for answers. You reward creativity in yourself and others. You honor mistakes as evidence of courage, not failure. And you demand more from schools, from teachers, from society. True education should ignite, not extinguish. It should plant doubt, not just answers. It should teach you to think so freely, so dangerously, that you become impossible to control. Ask yourself, what have you memorized but never questioned? What rules have you followed but never challenged? What dreams have you buried because someone told you they didn't fit? The system is strong, but it is not invincible. Every time a child asks, why? Every time a student refuses to parrot, every time a classroom erupts in curiosity, the design weakens, the cage rattles. You were born not to obey, but to create. Not to memorize, but to imagine. Not to conform, but to transform. Don't let a system built for silence rob you of your voice. Because the world doesn't need more obedience. It needs more wonder, more rebellion, more minds brave enough to ask the questions that scare those in power. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one who will finally tear down the walls by daring to think out loud. Strategic historical deletion. History is supposed to be a record, a mirror reflecting everything that has shaped us, for better or worse. But what if that mirror isn't just cracked, but carefully sanded down, polished, and then painted over? What if the stories you grew up hearing, the lessons you were taught, the cautionary tales whispered as warnings, are just the parts of the past that someone decided you should remember, and the rest, erased, buried, deleted not by accident, but by strategy? This is the machinery of strategic historical deletion. It's not just about forgetting dates or losing dusty archives. It's the deliberate erasure of entire movements, revolutions, and inconvenient truths, wiped from books, vanished from curricula, edited out of collective memory. It's a process so subtle, so thorough, that you rarely notice what's missing. The map of the past you inherit has blank spaces where real people, real events, real ideas used to exist. Think about it. How many times have you heard, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it? But what if the history you're learning isn't even there to be learned from? What if the most vital, explosive, dangerous stories have been cut out, labeled as mistakes, shrouded in shame, or twisted into warnings against ever trying again? The rebellions that nearly toppled the order, the uprisings that briefly rewrote the rules, the thinkers whose words sparked revolutions, only to be smeared, ridiculed, or disappeared. This isn't a relic of ancient empires or distant dictatorships. It happens everywhere, all the time. Regimes fall and rewrite the past to legitimize themselves. Textbooks are quietly revised. Museums renovate their displays. Statues are raised and toppled. Photographs are doctored. Digital archives are altered or deleted. Generations grow up learning a story that isn't whole, missing not just facts, but the living spirit of challenge and hope that once flickered in the shadows. Sometimes the deletion is blatant. A book burning, a banned film, a vanished dissident. Sometimes it's more insidious. Names are left out. Footnotes shrink to nothing. Teachers avoid dangerous subjects, labeling them too complex or irrelevant. Artists and thinkers who once moved millions are quietly reframed as failures, their work dismissed as dangerous, their legacies reduced to punchlines or footnotes. The world is full of locked drawers, burned letters, sealed archives, conversations that end with a nervous glance and a change of subject. You see the effect not just in what you remember, but in what you never even think to ask. Entire movements erased so thoroughly that you live in the afterimage, a world built on the rubble of forgotten revolutions. You inherit silences, not stories. You accept the boundaries of what can and cannot be changed, not knowing they were drawn to keep you from asking the wrong questions. You are taught that some ideas are naive, some dreams impossible, some mistakes too shameful to ever repeat. But what if they weren't mistakes? What if they were moments when the world nearly shifted and the record was scrubbed so you would never try again? Strategic historical deletion is not just about power. It's about safety. Not yours, but theirs. It's about making sure the dangerous knowledge stays locked away so the engines of the present keep running unchallenged. It's easier to govern a world that never saw true rebellion. It's easier to sell a future when the past has been edited to look like a warning. The scars of deletion run deeper than you think. Without memory, there can be no true agency. If you don't know what's possible, you can't dream beyond the options handed to you. If you don't know who resisted, who won, who lost, who almost changed everything, you inherit a world that feels inevitable, fixed, unbreakable. You're told, it's always been this way, and you believe it because the proof to the contrary was erased before you were born. But sometimes, the cracks show through. A name you've never heard, suddenly alive in a half-burned letter, a photograph tucked in a forbidden book, whispers passed down through families, stubborn rumors, fragments of stories. There are always survivors, keepers of memory, carriers of the flame. Their work is dangerous because every recovered truth is a breach in the walls of the present. So, what do you do when you realize you're living in a landscape shaped by deletion? The first step is to look for the gaps. Notice the silences, the things no one talks about. Ask uncomfortable questions. Why did that movement fail? Why was that book banned? Who benefits from forgetting? The second step is to seek out the shadows. Read banned books, listen to censored music, talk to the elders who still remember what you were never supposed to know. Piece together the mosaic, knowing it will never be whole, but that every fragment matters. Because every time you recover a lost story, every time you remember what was meant to be forgotten, you punch a hole in the narrative that cages you. You remind yourself, and the world, that history is not finished, that the past was never as tidy, as inevitable, as safe as you were told, and that, maybe, neither is the future. In the end, strategic historical deletion is not just a theft of memory, it's a theft of possibility. Reclaiming your history is an act of rebellion. Remember what was lost, ask what was erased, and never accept the story you're handed as the only story that ever mattered. Legal labyrinth trap. You are told you have rights. You are told you are free. It's written everywhere, carved in marble, inked in constitutions, sung in anthems, promised at every ceremony of power. But in the spaces between those words lies a world you rarely see. A maze so deep and twisting that your rights are both everywhere and nowhere. Welcome to the legal labyrinth trap. A place where rights exist on paper, but the machinery of the law is so complex, so endless, that by the time you learn how to use your freedoms, they are already gone, quietly revoked, never truly yours. You grow up believing the law is simple. Don't steal, don't harm, don't lie under oath. But as you get older, the walls of the labyrinth begin to appear. Paperwork, procedures, protocols, exceptions, amendments, clauses buried within clauses. You read the fine print, and the fine print has fine print. Every right comes with asterisk, an annotation, a footnote only a seasoned expert can decode. The system is vast, sprawling, and deliberate. It moves slowly, shuffling mountains of paper, digital forms, silent verdicts, secret settlements. You are not just a citizen. You are a subject navigating an endless maze, guided only by signs written in a language you were never taught to speak. Imagine being arrested or accused, or just unlucky enough to get a letter from the government. They say you have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, the right to a fair trial. But what does that mean in practice? Can you afford an attorney, or will you get a name from a long, overburdened list? Can you take time off work for court, for hearings, for appeals? Do you know which forms to fill, which deadlines matter, which questions you should answer, and which could ruin you? Even a simple dispute can spiral into a nightmare. Missed deadlines, lost paperwork, legal jargon that tangles your mind and tongue. The process itself is the punishment. By the time you find the right door, it's already locked. The truth is, the law is not built for you. It's built for those who know its twists, those with money, with counsel, with connections. You see this in immigration courts, where desperate people lose their futures for missing a single hearing, for filing the wrong form, for trusting the wrong advice. You see it in bankruptcy, in civil suits, in property disputes. The rights are there, but the maze is deeper than anyone tells you. The system is full of hidden corridors, dead ends, secret passages that lead only to confusion and loss. You are told to know your rights. But what does that mean when every right is encased in language designed to bewilder, to intimidate, to slow you down? Legal codes run for thousands of pages. Regulations change by the week. Precedents shift with every new ruling. The doors that were open yesterday are bolted shut today. Even the experts, judges, lawyers, clerks, argue, hesitate, reverse themselves. The law is not a map. It is a fog, a labyrinth, a living thing that moves while you sleep. Sometimes the trap is deliberate. A new law is passed with fanfare, promising justice, equality, empowerment. But the implementation is a tangle of bureaucracy, of forms you can't find, offices that never answer the phone, websites that crash or never launch. You have the right to health care, to vote, to protest, to seek justice. But the barriers are subtle. ID requirements, complex procedures, endless wait times, fees, rules that shift without notice. The effect is the same. The right exists, but you are too exhausted, too confused, too discouraged to claim it. And when you finally learn how to fight, when you master the maze, memorize the process, become your own advocate, the goalposts move again. Rights are quietly revoked, redefined, reinterpreted by courts or agencies or faceless bureaucrats. A clause is added, a requirement tweaked, a precedent overturned. By the time you catch up, the door has swung shut. You are left on the outside, wondering if you ever truly had what you were promised. This is not fiction. It happens every day, to millions. Workers denied wages because of a missing signature. Tenants evicted on technicalities they never understood. Protesters silenced by permits they never knew they needed. Even in the most open societies, rights are eroded by process, by complexity, by the sheer weight of the labyrinth. The law becomes a moat around power, protecting those inside, confusing those outside, slowly shifting the meaning of freedom until it is just another word in a rulebook. The legal labyrinth trap is not maintained by malice alone. Sometimes it's inertia, systems too old to change, built on layers of rules no one remembers. Sometimes it's fear, of fraud, of chaos, of change. But the effect is the same. Your rights are a riddle, and every answer leads to a new question. You find yourself policing your own dreams, shrinking your ambitions to fit the corridors you understand. You avoid conflict, settle for less, accept what is given. The cost of navigating the labyrinth is too high, the reward too uncertain. You live in a house of rights, but the doors are all locked from the inside. You are told, if you don't like the system, change it. But to change the system, you must first master it. And by the time you do, you are part of it. Shaped by its logic, speaking its language, enforcing its rules. Reformers become gatekeepers. Outsiders become insiders. The maze expands, absorbing your resistance, muting your outrage, until the status quo is safer than the risk of getting lost. So what can you do? How do you live in the legal labyrinth trap without losing yourself? First, you notice. You name the maze for what it is. You refuse to pretend that rights on paper are rights in practice. You help each other, share knowledge, break down jargon, demand simplicity, clarity, access. You refuse to let confusion become complacency. You fight for the doors to stay open, for the paths to be marked, for the rules to be written in the language of the people, not just the powerful. But most of all, you remember, rights are not gifts. They are not static. They are living things, shaped by struggle, eroded by neglect, reclaimed only when enough people find their way out of the labyrinth together. Don't wait until the doors are locked forever. Start now. Because the greatest trap of all is to believe that a right you cannot use is a right you still possess.